Welcome to the quarterly board meeting of the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. This meeting is being held on May 16th, 2024, and the time is 10:23. This meeting is occurring at Touro University, California, Farragut Inn, located at 1750 Club Drive, Vallejo, California, 94592. Today's meeting will be run according to the Open Meetings Act as required by law. The meeting will be conducted using the following...
This is the moderator. You're cutting out. I just heard University of California and that was it.
Ooh, okay. Was I speaking into the mic well? Let me try and read this next part and see if you can hear me. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. Could you hear that well?
Could you hear that, Liz?
Yes, I heard that.
Okay. During each agenda item, the host moderating this WebEx event will activate the Q&A feature of WebEx and will ask anyone wishing to make a public comment to indicate so by replying yes. The host will then call on the individuals who indicated they wish to make a public comment by name by the name that they joined WebEx as. When called upon, the host will unmute the microphone of the individual and he or she will have 3 minutes to make his or her public comment. The host will audibly announce when the 15 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 3 minutes have passed or lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. All participants will mute their microphone or phone during each presentation of the agenda topic. Board members who wish to provide additional comments should select the hand raise feature next to their name. We don't have anyone virtual. So I'll skip that part. At the conclusion of the discussion from board members, I will ask for public comment. At the conclusion of the discussion period, I will call for a vote if necessary, or move to the next agenda item.
This is the moderator. It seems like you're going in and out. I am not hearing what you're saying right now.
Okay.
The audio coming back in the room is canceling itself, and that's probably why, or they're dropping the inlet. So it's everything here in the live stream is good.
So he's saying everything here on the live stream is good. So I think we do have to figure this out, because that would mean if she's not hearing, the public's not hearing.
They can hear you on the live stream.
Oh, through the live stream they can
The
hear.
live stream, the WebEx is maybe.
I heard something about live streaming. We need to blank because if she's not hearing, and then you cut off again, and I haven't heard you since.
Okay. Kind of important that she's able to hear
I
us.
heard that. I'm listening to the live stream.
Okay, so you heard her, you can hear me now? Okay.
Well, if he's on the live stream, that's via YouTube, not the WebEx.
This is the WebEx.
Oh, it's the WebEx?
So are they complaining about the WebEx or live stream?
It's the WebEx.
I'm on the WebEx.
So the live stream you can hear, but she's having a hard time. So just the moderator, I'm trying to isolate the problem. Is it just that the moderator is having a hard time hearing, but anybody who's on the live stream can hear and participate actively?
I'm on the WebEx. I heard everything.
You heard everything I said?
And the WebEx
And
is...
no echo.
Okay. So, okay, we're gonna continue. All in attendance should keep their comments specific to the agenda item being discussed. For board members attending, nobody's attending remotely, blah, 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 okay. An opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda, excuse me, will be provided. Please be advised that during this comment period, the board cannot engage in discussions or take action on any matter that is raised, except to decide whether to place it the matter on an agenda for future meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order and establish a quorum and ask that board members, well, again, not on the computer, sorry. Some of these notes I might be repetitive because we thought that we were going to have 2 people virtual, but we have no one virtual. Machiko, will you please call the roll?
I will. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. Corey Damian,
Present. Present.
Dr. Buhari,
Present.
Dr. Luzak,
Present.
Andrew Marino,
Present.
Denise Pines,
Present.
and the following board members are absent. Dr. Kim, Dr. Jensen, and Dr. Patel, but you have a quorum.
Great. Moving to agenda item number 3, reading of the board's mission statement by Executive Director Erica Calderon.
The mission of the Osteopathic Medical Board of California is to protect the public by requiring competency, accountability, and integrity in the safe practice of medicine by osteopathic physicians and surgeons.
Agenda item number 4, review and possible approval of the January 2024 board meeting minutes. Associate Governmental Program Analyst Beth Dutchler. Is somebody-
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Beth, we can hear you.
Good morning, Madam Board President, board members, and Osteo staff. I am Beth Dutchler. I'm part of the enforcement unit, and I've been at the board for about 3 years. I'm here today to present the meeting minutes from our last board meeting, which was held on January 18th, 2024. I am asking the board members to adopt the minutes as is or as amended today. But first, we will review each page one by one for any corrections or edits. If you can hear me and we're ready, I will start with page 1. Do we have any edits or corrections?
No.
Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. And the last page is page 16. Okay. I will turn this back to you, Madam Board President Pines, for any discussion or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as is.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Great. A motion has been adopted, and second, can I get all board members to concur? A vote?
Corey Damian,
Yes.
Dr. Buhari,
Yes.
Dr. Luzak,
Yes.
Andrew Marino,
Yes.
Denise Pines.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Are there any comments from the public on the board meeting minutes? Maybe she can't hear me. Are there any comments from the public? Online. Liz, can you hear us? Liz?
This is the moderator. As I communicated, we are having sound qualities on the WebEx end. At least someone else as well who's logged into WebEx cannot hear clearly. It keeps cutting in and out. I see the public's comment slide is up, so I'm assuming that public comment time is open, so I will give the instructions. So members of the public who are logged in via WebEx, if you would like to participate, if you were able to hear any of that discussion and would like to participate, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen. Let me make sure that is open. Give me just a moment. It is now open. And type the word comment in the text field, but make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking the send button. If you prefer, you can raise your hand by clicking the outline of a hand, which is typically bottom center of your WebEx screen on the command strip or next to your name if you hover your cursor over your name. If you are calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. And if there's anyone on WebEx that would like to provide us feedback on the sound quality, please do so. And Michelle, I am going to send a request. Montserrat Ramos, I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I'm with Consumer Watchdog. I just wanted to cue in to see if the public comment was actually going to work, because I know we've been having problems hearing everything in the meeting thus far. Thank you.
Liz, do we have any other?
This is the moderator board. How would you like to proceed? That's another, someone else giving feedback. This is a third person saying that there's sound quality that we can't hear from WebEx. How would you like to proceed?
You can mute and unmute, but you all would have to sign up on your laptops.
Liz, hold on. We're discussing this.
The other thing you could do is, since everyone seems to have an electronic device, you can all sign in via WebEx. You would just have to remember to mute yourself after, or I can mute you when you're done speaking.
Oh, so
Instead
we'll be
of-
speaking
Through your laptop instead of, yeah.
Is that, yeah, the public comments are regarding the minutes? Okay, so we're going to go back, Liz, to seeing if there are any public comments regarding the minutes that have been adopted by the board.
Yes, this is the moderator, the WebEx. Q&A is open and the instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged into WebEx and would like to participate, click on the Q&A icon, which is the question mark inside of the square, typically bottom right corner of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment in the text field and make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking that send button. If you're calling in, you can press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. And give me just a moment as I go through. I see no request. And Michelle Montserrat Ramos, I see your hand is up, but I think it was from your previous comment. Okay. There are no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, the meeting have been adopted. So we're moving now to next agenda item, which is number 5, public comment on items not on the agenda. During the meeting today, public comment is welcome on any agenda item. As the item is taken up by the board, Please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members and is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take is to listen to comments and decide whether they want a future agenda item on the topic. No other action can be taken on that item at this meeting. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals and the board's mission. In order to allow the board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, the board will limit the time given to each person to 3 minutes. It is not necessary to repeat statements or views of a previous speaker. It is sufficient to state that you agree. As a reminder, please do not disclose details of an active enforcement case or licensing matter, as such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions could create a conflict and lead to a board decision being challenged in Superior Court. The board can receive comments regarding the board's processes in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific case circumstances where the decision is still pending. In addition, the board would like the public to address the board as a whole and not individual members. The board appreciates your cooperation and assistance in meeting its legal mandate. If you want to comment on an agenda item, please wait until we get to that agenda item. Comments at this time are only for items not on the agenda. And again, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. At this time, is there any public comments from members of the public in the room or on the WebEx?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open on WebEx. The instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark, type comments, send it to all panelists, or press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. I see no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Thank you. So moving to agenda item number 6, President's Report. The Osteopathic Medical Board of California spent much of the first quarter working hard to meet our objectives for enhancing consumer protection. The Osteopathic Medical Board of California is dedicated to advancing consumer protection goals during the first quarter. Regular discussions with the Executive Director, Erica Calderon, have been instrumental in shaping meeting agendas and progressing board projects. In line with our commitment to transparency, we are preparing for our inaugural open notice meeting with patient advocates in 2025. This initiative aims to listen to the public as well as for the board to share its intricate complaint process, its role, and enforcement efforts. On April 21st, my re-election during the recent House of Delegates meeting for the Federation of State Medical Boards reaffirms my dedication to public board membership. During this meeting, the Federation adopted several resolutions and policies and looking to present guidelines on the use of AI in the fall of 2024. On a national level, there has been a flurry of legislative activities related to states introducing or adopting laws that seek to streamline medical licensure for international medical graduates, known as IMGs, who have completed all of their residency training overseas. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners is the first to pass a law that considers these IMGs as fully trained physicians and can practice in their state. Other states have pending legislation. In California, an IMG must have 3 years of graduate training in the U.S. I remain vigilant in reporting on pertinent national issues for Californians. Despite state budget constraints limiting in-person attendance, our executive staff's engagement was via teleconference, which underscores still our commitment to fulfilling our duties on a national level. I eagerly anticipate serving on the Federation of State Medical Boards for another 3 years. Lastly, I would like to take a few moments to acknowledge the service of 2 board members whose term concludes at the end of this board meeting. First, Dr. Cyrus Bahari, known as Cy to all of the board members, was first appointed to the board on October 28, 2015 by Governor Jerry Brown and reappointed on December 17, 2019 by Governor Gavin Newsom. Dr. Bahari served as the board president from January of 2021 through January of 2024. We would like to wish Dr. Bahari all the best in his future endeavors and would like to thank him for his commitment and service on the board. Dr. Bahari, if you can please stand so we can present a certificate of appreciation. Thank you so much. Dr. Bahari, would you like to say a few words about your service over the last, I think, is it 8 years?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the acknowledgement. It means a lot to me. Can you hear me? It's meant a lot to me to have the confidence initially of Governor Brown and his Office of Appointments, and then reappointed by Governor Newsom, at least to take the charge of public protection with regard to the Osteopathic Medical Board and the osteopathic medical profession. And it's been an honor to serve with the board members that I've had the experience to be on the board with, the level of professionalism and the level of intensity with their approach to this service that they provide and that they're providing for the people of California. And I appreciate everything, and it's been fun. I've seen a few executive directors come and go, and as I've said, this is my favorite. But anyway, so you guys are one of the things we always want to do with everything that we leave our hands on is to leave something in better position and better condition than we found it. And I think going forward with Denise Pines as the board president and all of the board leadership and all of the board members, this board is in a much better condition than when I first started. And I appreciate all the effort to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Elizabeth Jensen, who is not here with us virtually or in person, but let me just share a little bit about her appointment process. She was appointed on the board in October 28, 2015 by Governor Jerry Brown and was reappointed on December 17, 2019 by Governor Gavin Newsom. She served as vice president from January of 2021 to January of 2024, and we'd like to wish her the best in her work and thank her also for her commitment and service on the board during her tenure with us. As I preside over our first board meeting as president, I want to extend gratitude to the board and to the staff and to the public for entrusting me with this responsibility for this fiscal year ahead. Are there any questions or comments from members on the president's report? Are there any questions or comments from online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. Members of the public who are logged in via WebEx, if you would like to participate, click that question mark inside of the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in via your phone, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item 7, discussion and possible action on proposed 2025 board meeting dates. So we have Thank you for all of you for responding on Doodle survey for this calendar year. We really want to make sure we have these dates locked in. The goal for me as president is to have as many people, many of our board members actively participating at every single meeting, whether that's virtual or in person, and to have at minimum one board meeting where we're all physically in person, and we're seeing that as our January meeting to do that. So we have these dates, January 23rd, 2025. Does anyone have a conflict with that date? We have May 15th, 2025. Does anyone have a conflict with that date? We have August 14th, 2025. Does anyone have a conflict with that date? And we have November 13th, 2025. Does anyone have a conflict with that date? Okay. Just a reminder, we have 2 other board meetings scheduled for the rest of this year. Our next board meeting is on August 15th, 2024 at the California Health Sciences University in Clovis, California. And the last meeting is scheduled for November 14th at the Department of Consumer Affairs in the Evergreen location hearing room. Since we've all said we don't have any discussion on this, we'll move on to comments from anyone who is the public virtually.
This is the moderator. Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Great, thanks. We have our meeting dates for 2025. Moving to agenda item number 8, Executive Director's Report. Ms. Erica Calderon.
Good morning. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Good morning, Madam Board President, Ms. Pines, and members of the board. Erica Calderon here to give you my director's report. We do apologize for the late start this morning with all of our issues. I will tell the board members here publicly that we are working on getting our own sound system so we can carry that with us going forward, and that will hopefully prevent us from having these future issues in the future. Before I get started, I do want to take a moment to give a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Bahari and Dr. Jensen for spending the last decade of their lives serving this board, for hiring me and trusting that I will dedicate myself to this board. Oh, sorry, a little emotional. So it could continue to live up to its mission. I would also like to thank and congratulate Ms. Denise Pines for joining me in this journey, to congratulate her for being re-elected as Board of Directors for FSMB. That's going to be huge for our board in our own personal recognition. I do hope, Dr. Bahari and Dr. Jensen, that you stay in touch. As mentioned before, we could always use expert reviewers. I'm going to just mention that again. My director's report here is intended to provide the members of the Osteopathic Medical Board with an update on personnel, other administrative functions, and projects occurring at the OMBC, and there is no action needed. In terms of personnel, this is the first time in over a year that the board doesn't have an update on any personnel changes. The board continues to have 13.9 authorized positions, and I am happy to report that there are no vacancies and everyone is where they need to be. In terms of office operations, for telework, this office is still operating under a hybrid telework model. This schedule continues to be effective and productive to office operations, and there are no immediate concerns for any changes. Office morale is great. Actually very high, and I'm very pleased to report that. All units continue to work extremely hard to uphold our mission, improve our productivity, and in turn provide excellence to our stakeholders. In terms of our lease agreement, since our last update, the board has finalized its agreement with our lessor and our office improvements have been completed. The board would like to take this time to personally thank DCA's Business Service Office, in particular Lee Arts, and Ms. Sonia Torres with the Department of General Services for all of their hours spent on this project, and of course our lessor Ethan Conrad Properties for working with the OMBC to allow that our office receive its improvements that were much needed and at the same time save us money. Since our office space is very small, staff is mostly excited about our soundproofing white noise machine installation that will help reduce noise in the office and prevent background noise from being picked up on our Teams calls. Board staff is also very excited to have received key cards on our doors and no longer having to utilize actual keys to open them. Lastly, the board can also report that it is equipped with a secure office safe where overnight mail with accounts receivable can be safely secured overnight. All around, this board has received greater security, and there is nothing more comforting for me to know. In terms of our strategic plan, since our last update, the board is happy to report that the final stage of the board's 2024-2028 strategic planning session has completed. DCA Solid Team met with board leadership on March 29, 2024, and worked on the board's action plan, which is a roadmap that has been developed by the Solid Team to provided to board leadership. This board has also been equipped with an action plan tracker, and at the request of board members, the board plans to report on its milestones at every January board meeting on an annual basis. One of the first pending items that board staff plans to work on with its members on is to develop board committees. This will take place soon after the board receives notification of its new board member appointees, which we hope the board receives soon. A special thanks to Ms. Sarah Irani and Ann Fisher with DCA Solid Team for making this extensive process painless, extremely fun and interactive, but most importantly, very productive and informative for me. As a new executive director, I can certainly appreciate the environmental scan, which was the first stage. It gave me a clear picture of where the board stands and where it can improve. Thank you to staff, consumers, other stakeholders who participated. Your voices were certainly heard. In terms of technology, at every meeting, the board continues to report how board staff continues to work hard with our Breeze team to make database improvements. At this meeting, I would like to highlight some of our most recent accomplishments and some pending projects. As previously reported, the board took the initiative, even though it wasn't required, to accept impact statements from our consumer complaints. A new status letter was created to allow the submission of these statements prior to the case being referred to the field for a formal investigation. And in July, after the board received funding, it hopes to implement interviews that will be required for all quality of care complaints prior to closure. After receiving several requests from the public, the board implement the Medical Board of California's complaint tracking system. It is noteworthy to state that this board has contacted the Medical Board of California to inquire about this system, which is still in its early stages of development. It is important to point out that the Medical Board of California is developing this system utilizing their own internal IT staff. It is a system that is being created separate and apart from the Breeze database. Unfortunately, this board isn't equipped with its own IT staff or department, and to create a system would be extremely costly to this board. However, this board plans to continue to monitor NBC's complaint tracking system and its developments, and will continue to look for ways that our board can improve our own communication with our consumers, utilizing our current resources and budget. As you are aware, in January, the board voted to eliminate our pocket license. Since then, the board has developed a self-generated transaction that will allow our licensees to print their own pocket licenses through their Breeze system accounts free of cost. We have also eliminated the following paper applications and moved those to our Breeze database: change of address, name change request, endorsement license verification letters. The board has also implemented email reminders to all of our renewable applications in an effort to eliminate paper reminders and be more eco-friendly and, of course, save the board money. A current outstanding project is to move our initial fictitious name permit, better known as our F&P application, to Breeze, and also allow for physicians who hold the F&P permit to self-generate a copy of this permit through their database free of cost. This transaction will allow the licensee to print permits at satellite locations as well. I would like to thank our newest office technician, Sanjay Naresh, and our prior office technician, Andrea Harmon, for working closely with me to make these significant improvements, which again will save a lot of processing time for staff. And of course, a special thanks to the masterminds behind all of these projects, our Breeze representatives, Robin, Dimitri, Michael, Steve, Zune, and their leader, Tim. In terms of our social media accounts, the board took into consideration some of our consumer comments at the last board meeting, especially those comments coming from our consumer watchdog group. Even though our ability to work on our outreach is currently compromised due to our current statewide budget issues and limited staff resources, the board did reach out to our communications department and requested that they work with us to provide a lot more consumer-oriented content on our social media accounts. Our social media accounts are being used to provide more consumer outreach in terms of the complaint review process, and such posts have also been translated to other language to hopefully reach our very diverse population in California. The board also continues to utilize these social media accounts to advertise for our board meetings, operational and board process changes, cures updates, and expedited licensure pathways. In terms of our website, the board continues to receive great feedback about it. We are keeping all of our content current. I do want to take the time to point out some key areas on the web, though, that some people may not be familiar with. On the right-hand side of the board's front page, right bottom left-hand side, apologies, there is a quick hits tab. This tab will navigate you to key areas within the website, such as our enforcement actions, which are updated quarterly, our license verification webpage, and most importantly, our email alert subscriptions, where you can sign up to receive information such as monthly enforcement actions, board meeting materials, legislative changes, and opportunity to comment on pending regulations. There is also a tab called Alerts. This is where you will see the latest changes, such as the elimination of the pocket license, changes to our applications, and the extension of our postgraduate training license expiration date. Another very important area for our stakeholders to know is we have a frequently asked question link, which is located on the right top-hand corner of the homepage. This is where you can see the board's commonly asked questions and answers to our F&P applications, our initial and postgraduate applications, again, our extensive consumer complaint process, cures, mandatory reporting requirements, and some commonly asked questions from our consumers and our licensees themselves. In terms of communication, the executive director had calls and email exchange with Madam Board President Denise Pines to discuss pending and ongoing projects and meeting agendas. The executive director continues to meet periodically with the board's attorney general liaison, Ms. Carolyn Westfall, and also communicates frequently with Ms. Gloria Castro, Senior Assistant Attorney General. The executive director meets monthly with Melissa Dawes, which is our supervising investigator over our health and quality investigation unit, to discuss progress on any pending investigations. The executive director reached out to Ms. Michelle Montserrat Ramos with Consumer Watchdog Group and extended an invitation to our office. Board staff participated in meetings with other local, state, and national organizations in discussing and deciding regulatory measures common to OMBC and others. These organizations include, but not limited to, the Office of Attorney General's, Department of Justice, DCA, other healing board arts, California Department of Public Health, Department of Healthcare Services, the Federation of FSMB, the National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners, and the Osteopathic Physicians and Surgeons of California, and our contractor for the diversion program, Maximus. Outreach update. This is my last update. The board is getting ready to publish its second edition of the board's newsletter, Osteoscope, I am so sorry, which will be shared with all of our stakeholders and make it available for download on our website. The board will soon be working on a new project, which will be a virtual tutorial video of our application process, as well as our consumer complaint process. We hope to release these videos at the end of the calendar year. We are looking forward to getting back to doing in-person outreach engagement soon, and our hopes are to not only attend schools, but also some health fairs where we can interact more with our consumers. All around, this board is doing well. I couldn't be more proud of my managers or my staff. We could be tired at times, but I love that they're still holding up their smiles and working hard every single day. At this time, this does conclude my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Ms. Calderon. That was great. Great updates, and you've been busy. Are there any comments by the board? Not seeing any. Moderator, is there anyone requesting a public comment online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square and type the word comment and send it to all panelists. Or if you're calling in, *3 to raise your virtual hand. I do see some virtual hands here. I see 2, and I'll get to both of you. I'm going to set my timer to 3 minutes. I have Kimberly Turbin. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone, and just click unmute me from your end.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Turbin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I am from Stockton, and I am a volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. I would also like to thank our Executive Director, Calderon, for ensuring that this board implement the patient impact statement at the beginning of the enforcement process. Thank you. It is an important addition to the enforcement process that we as a team fought so hard to place in legislation and fight to keep in legislation. We hope that Executive Director Calderon will ensue that the required interview before a quality of care complaint is closed and will be implemented by this board. The required interview will be a game changer for complainants and will help ensure that the public has the ability to speak to board staff before their complaint is closed. I'm excited to hear about the development of the board's committees. We are most interested in the development of an enforcement committee and a communication committee. We look forward to seeing these committees develop. Thank you for taking into consideration our comments on social media and how to better communicate with the public. Making sure that your social media outreach is consumer-oriented and well as physician-oriented is so important. Providing consumer-oriented content costs nothing but staff time. Do you have current plans to expand your social media content beyond Facebook? It is important for the board to have a presence on all forms of social media. The work on a consumer complaint virtual tutorial video is also needed. It's very important. The public does not know what you are looking for in these consumer complaints. You are closing complaints because we are not providing you with the specific information that the medical consultants and medical experts are looking for. You can fix this gap by providing the actual medical expert and medical consultant training information in the virtual consumer complaint tutorial video. This will not take a lot of time or effort. Just give us the information you're looking for in our complaints. You will be helping us and the complainant, and you'll be helping the staff to improve the enforcement process simply by giving us information that you are looking for. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Next individual identified as, give me just a moment here. Maria Ibarra Navarrete. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone and set the timer to 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Maria Ibarra Navarrete. I am from San Jose, and I am volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. We look forward to the development of the board's new committees. As a new advocate and new to the process of the board, I am most interested in the development of an enforcement committee. I believe that we need to dig deeper into the enforcement process and how we can make the enforcement process work for all stakeholders. One of the only ways to do this is to disclose enforcement in more specifics in an enforcement committee meeting held during our quarterly board meetings. I would like to thank Executive Director Calderon for her implementation of the patient impact statement at the beginning of the investigation process. We know that legislation did not require this board to implement these changes, and we are greatly appreciated your efforts to do so. I ask that Executive Calderon continue to implement the required interview before our quality care complaints are closed. Without the required interview, I was left without little to no input into my brother's death complaint. Without the required interview, I challenged my brother's closed death complaint and resubmitted an appeal for reconsideration. I was again denied an investigation. With the required interview, I would have had an opportunity to fight for my brother's death complaint. I would have had the opportunity to present my brother's late autopsy toxicology report and would have had the supplemental information that was not available at the time that I filed my brother's complaint. I would have had the opportunity to support the additional evidence I offered the board, which would not have allowed enforcement staff to easily dismiss my new evidence. There are changes that need to be made on the board website. We do not have as much information available on the OMBC website as we do on the MBC website. We do appreciate the enforcement actions listed on separate pages so we can get a better picture of what kind of actions the board pursues as disciplinary actions. We need more basic information on our physicians, on your physician profile. It would be helpful to have a stakeholders meeting on future updates to the board's website to get the public's ideas of what information is missing and needs to be added. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Next individual, Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone, and I set my timer to 3 minutes.
Good morning. I am Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I am with Consumer Watchdog. I'm excited to hear about the development of the board's committees. We are most interested in the development of an enforcement committee and a communications committee. We are anticipating that there will be committee meetings included as part of your quarterly board meetings in order to break down the issues with enforcement and communication with the public as well as physicians. We look forward to seeing these committees develop. Regarding your accomplishments, we would like to thank Executive Director Erica Calderon for her willingness to implement the patient impact statement into the beginning of the investigation process, and for the future implementation of the required interview of the complainants before our quality of care complaints are closed. Social media. We appreciate the effort to communicate with your communications department to use your social media accounts for communication with the public and not only with physicians. Writing posts to promote your board's accomplishments and implementing the patient impact statements is a win-win for this board. Promoting how to file a complaint is critical, but you can also write a post about accusations filed or actions taken
or even how to find your website. None of these actions will require funding, just a little bit of staff's time. I started following your Facebook account yesterday and appreciate your consumer-oriented content. Question, do you plan on expanding your platform to other mediums besides Facebook? I will begin sharing your posts to bring more members of the public to your social media platforms. Outreach update. We appreciate your effort to work on a consumer complaint process tutorial. We hope that you will use your medical consultant, medical expert training materials as an example of what you're looking for when a consumer files a complaint. It'll give the complainant a clear understanding of what you need, and it'll save staff time and work. Thank you.
This is the moderator, last individual identified as Tracy Dominguez. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. This never gets easier. I'm sorry. I'm just sitting. Got really emotional. Good morning. I am Tracy Dominguez. I am from Bakersfield, and I am a volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. I appreciate Executive Director Calderon implementing the impact statement into the beginning of the investigation process. I know that the legislation did not require this board to do so. I hope the Executive Director Calderon will continue to implement the required interviews before our quality of care complaints are closed. The required interview is crucial to the public and will be crucial to fixing issues in your enforcement process. I know that the required interview would have prevailed negligence in the handling or the lack of handling my grandson's death complaint by your prior administration. When I filed my grandson's death complaint for my grandson Malachi, the former executive Mark Edos told me that he's to send the complaint directly to him. Now it took some negotiation along the way to help from Consumer Watchdog, but after we did everything he asked us to do, he told me that he would personally handle my grandson's complaint. We believed him. Director Mark Edos, what he told us was that he was going to let my grandson's death, what he didn't tell us is he was going to let my grandson's death complaint sit for 3 years without a review. Nothing, and then close his death complaint. Mark Ito lied to me. I know that Mark Ito lied to me because I was vigilant and participating in every aspect of this process. How many of the families did Mark Ito lie to? How many other baby complaints were abandoned and left with no review? I have never, ever received a letter or a single word from Mark Ito or this board that my grandson's death complaint meant nothing to you guys, to this board. It was a lie. And time again by Mark Edos and Corey Sparks. I have their emails to prove this. Now the question is, what is this board going to do? Are you going to find abandoning death complaints acceptable? Again, we had the required interview. If I would have had the required interview before the quality of care complaint, then this board could not have easily closed my grandson's death complaint with no explanation and handled his death complaint so negligently. I'm not going to stop here. I'm not going away. With or without you, we will make a change.
This is the moderator. I had to mute the microphone. The 3 minutes were up. There are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. I'd like to thank all the public for making their comments. Now we're going to move to agenda item number 9, Intergovernmental Relations Report and Administrative Services Update. And from DCA, we have Melissa Gear, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations.
Hello and good morning. President Pines, Vice President Moreno, Executive Director Calderon, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Gear, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Before I begin my update, I'd like to thank Dr. Cyrus Bahari and Dr. Elizabeth Jensen for their commitment and dedicated services to the board and protecting California's consumers. Likewise, I would like to take a moment to thank all of you for your service. Although Public Service Recognition Week has ended, DCA honored more than 3,000 DCA board and bureau employees dedicated to protecting California's consumers. DCA thanks all employees and board members for their service and contributions to consumer protection. Second, on April 30th, DCA hosted an in-person meeting with Secretary Tamika Moss and executive leaders. It served as an opportunity for DCA leaders to meet our new secretary and hear her vision and priorities for the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the department. Next, DCA has learned of a recent increase in scams targeting licensees. Though the nature of the scams varies, they are similar in that they involve individuals falsely identifying themselves as board employees and telling the licensee they are under investigation. The scammers attempt to gather personal and/or financial information and may even demand payment. Boards are urged to be vigilant and proactive in providing licensees with tips on avoiding scams. In addition, on April 5th, 2024, DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting. The committee reviewed and discussed the member application process, establishing subcommittees, and solicited input from the committee on how to expand language access, workforce development, and advance DEI in 2024. The next committee meeting will be held on July 26th, and if you have ideas you'd like the committee to consider, please let your executive officer know. As a reminder, DCA's Learning Management System has many DEI-related training courses available. Board members are encouraged to participate in available trainings and continue to grow in their DEI efforts. Furthermore, last month, DCA's Office of Public Affairs staff participated in 2 Facebook Live events hosted by the Consulate of Mexico's Sacramento and Fresno offices during its Financial Education Week. Staff presented Get to Know DCA in Spanish and shared a broad overview of consumer and licensing information. In addition, DCA joined an in-person resource event with the Consulate of Mexico in Sacramento. Another Get to Know DCA virtual event was held with the Consulate of Mexico in San Bernardino on May 14th. The consulates have expressed interest in future event partnerships to share even more licensing and consumer resources. Additionally, in the coming months, DCA will be developing workforce development outreach opportunities for all boards and bureaus to participate in. I look forward to sharing more information soon. As we look ahead, please keep the following information in mind. As the fiscal year comes to an end, please submit your travel expense claims, or TECs, as soon as possible and no later than Wednesday, June 7th. Claims submitted after this date will still be processed. However, the State Controller's Office will not issue payments until after July 5th. All travel expenses and advances submitted for travel on or after July 1st will be processed for payment after the budget is signed. For questions regarding travel claims, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. Also, as a reminder, board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. BMONT will be offered virtually on June 18th, 2024, and again on October 22nd. Members can register via LMS. And lastly, now that the annual Form 700 filing period has ended, DCA and BBR would like to thank all of our board members and executive officers for helping us to achieve nearly 100% compliance. Again, thank you for this opportunity to join you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board at this time, and if there's any additional information you need on anything that I have shared, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gear. Does any of the members have any questions or comments based on this report? Nope. Moderator, do we have any comments from the public online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, type comment, send it to all panelists. If you're calling in from a phone, *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Thank you again, Ms. Guerrier. Now we're going to have Budgets Office Update from Harmony De Filippo. Am I saying that right? Probably not.
Thank you, Madam President Pines, and good morning. My name's Harmony DiFilippo, and I am the Budget Manager with the DCA Budget Office. I want to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present on Agenda Item 9B, the board's expenditure and projections and fund condition statement. First, I'm going to go over the board's expenditures, which is your attachment 9B1 of your materials. These projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 9. This report includes 22-23 actual expenditures in the green, as well as 23-24 budgeted and projected expenditures in the blue and orange. As we move to the end of the document, you will see the board had a beginning base budget of $3.593 million and is projected to spend a little over $3.4 million, creating a reversion to the board's fund of approximately $109,000, a reversion percentage of 2.99%. Based on the 23-24 budget bill language, the board requested a current year augmentation related to the Attorney General expenditures, and that has been included in this projection. The next document I will go over is the board's revenue projections, which is your attachment 9B, 2 of your materials. This report includes receipts collected through March and projected revenue to year end. I will go further into these projections as we transition into the next slide. The next document is attachment 9B3 of your materials, and this is the board's fund condition statement. As a reminder, we read this document from top to bottom and left to right. The left column is the board's prior year 22-23 actuals. It shows that the board began 22-23 with a beginning balance of $4.472 million, collected $3.734 million in revenue, with $1.172 million from initial license fees, $2.378 million from the license renewals, and $184,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board expended $3.625 million, which includes $273 in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. The board ended 22-23 with a $4.581 million reserve balance, or 15.3 months in reserve. For current year 23-24, the board projects revenues of $3.7 million, with $1.199 million projected from initial license fees, $2.3 million from renewal fees, and $169,000 from the issuance of citation, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board's 23-24 expenditures are based on the governor's budget with FM9 projections and is projected at $3.584 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of approximately $4.7 million, or 13.8 months in reserve. The Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board on a monthly basis as we continue to close out the fiscal months in the current fiscal year. A few things to note on the board's fund condition. The fund condition is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in the future years is a result of personal service adjustments. These include general salary increases as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The budget office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. You will also notice revenue is projected static in the out years. Lastly, I would like to note that to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would create cost pressures on the fund. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's fund condition statement and keep a line of communication open with the board's executive staff for any further needs or expectations. Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present at today's meeting, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Harmony. Do we have any comments from the board? Any comments from members in the room? Any comments from moderator from public online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. We are going to take a 15-minute break, so we're going to return at noon. Thank you. Licensee Program Update, Machiko Chong, Licensee Program Manager.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry, let me get the right slide. Attachments. Where's my attachment? There we go. We'll do that. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? Mic check.
This is the moderator. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Good morning. So I will begin with a program review. In January, the board successfully transitioned to the exclusive receipt and processing of electronic applications for the full unrestricted and postgraduate training license types. This transition has not only been a smooth process, as you will see during the review of the licensing statistics, but has been well received by all parties involved in the application submittal process. As previously noted by Director Calderon during her report, on March 17th, the board officially ceased the printing and delivery of pocket ID or wallet cards, which were automatically generated and delivered by a third-party vendor on behalf of DCA. Moving forward, newly licensed physicians who have applied for a full unrestricted license and/or licensees who have recently renewed their licensure now have the ability to log into their Breeze accounts and self-query a PDF copy of their wallet ID card from the License Activities drop-down. At this time, PTL licensees will continue to receive a hard copy of their wallet ID card upon issuance of a PTL number. However, the current process will continue to be monitored and may be changed in the future. Now that the cumbersome task of revising and adding both licensing applications to the Versa Online or VO platform has been completed, licensing staff have taken over the duty of requesting VR or VO change recommendations to facilitate a more simplified review process in office. In the upcoming months, I, along with my staff, intend on working closely with the Office of Public Affairs to create content that will assist and educate prospective applicants on the online application process. This content will be made available on the board's site and eventually shared through each of the board's social networking platforms. And so for licensing statistics, which are attachments 10A, which was just shown, and now 10B, provide a snapshot of the licensing population and application stats for the past 3 quarters of the fiscal year 23-24. There are currently 15,233 licensed osteopathic physicians and surgeons, 888 postgraduate training licensees, and 1,309 fictitious name permits. In the board's first quarter of exclusively processing online applications, licensing staff received a total of 427 application requests for the unrestricted license type, which was 123 more applications compared to Q2 stats from last year, and were able to issue 390 licenses, up 113 from Q2 stats of last year. With us entering the final quarter of the fiscal year, it's possible that the board could potentially end in a 35% increase in applications, which is exciting for us. That concludes my update for the licensing unit. I will turn it back to President Denise Pines.
Thank you, Ms. Chong, for that report. Are there any comments from the board? Are there any comments from public members in the audience? Any comments from the public online?
This is the moderator. The WebEx Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate and you're logged in, click on the question mark inside the square, type the word comment, and make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking the send button. If you're calling in from a phone, *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Okay, let's move to agenda item number 11, Administrative Services Program. Ms. Terry Thornfinson, Administrative Service Program Manager.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. Can you hear me with this? Don't have to bring this. Okay. So the administrative services, just a quick reminder what we do renewals, we do address changes, license verifications, and as Director Calderon mentioned, the online edition is really huge. It's huge for several reasons that I just want to emphasize. Is for years and years we have yearned to have online functionality, and to have it, it's so great staff-wise because it is so time-saving and workload efficient. And I think that consumers also really like it. You know, applicants, it's just much easier to be able to navigate to an online system. And anybody that has a Breeze account would be able to now see all the options that they do. And for just basic things, people think, oh, wow, why do I have to send a form in to change my name or to, change my address? But all of these things need to be accurate. That's why we have forms. And now to have those as part of Breeze is huge. And my staff that does both renewals, that's been online before, but the staff that answers the phone, Sanjay Naresh and Andrea Harmon, who have worked very hard to get on top of our backlog for FMPs. It's been critical, and they were really pivotal in wanting to work with Erica to put these services online. So I just want to emphasize that it really is a new day, and I think it's mutually beneficial to both, people on the external consumer end as well as the staff. And so we're still in the transition. We're still getting mail applications for things and forms, but we anticipate over the next month, when people start realizing that those forms are no longer available on the website, that they're going to be able to do everything online. They're being directed to go to their Breeze account and assist, if they don't have a Breeze account, how to set one up. So I think, we're not totally automated. FNPs, the fictitious name permits, need to have automation, but one of the things that is in the works is to fix the online renewal. For years, I wondered, when I looked at the statistics, why, if we have the fictitious name renewals online, why do like 80–85% still renew by mail, which comes in, at the end of the calendar year in December? And the reason is because there was a bit of information that wasn't given. And so people that were, I guess, a little bit, put some muscle into it, would call the board and say, hey, can I have this information so I can finish my renewal online? So that ended up being like 15–20% of renewals, but 80% for years, despite the online part, have been through the mail. So we anticipate that When that change is implemented in Breeze, that will be huge, because it's been a big workload at the end of any year during the Christmas and holiday season and stuff. So we are looking forward to that, and I can't emphasize enough how much the online functionality is really making a difference for both external and internal. And if you look at the attachment that talks about renewal processing times for both physician license and fictitious names from quarter 1, 2, 3, and we're not quite through with quarter 4, so they're blank. You can see that we are still providing processing within a reasonable time period. Renewals are still high because they're basically, doing all the processing 100% before the renewal. So until our regs are implemented, that's still going to be always a challenge for our 2 staff that handle our renewals. Our fictitious names, we had several years ago a lot of backlog. And now to see like 4 and 3 and 7 day processing, that's a huge improvement that we're very proud of. And my staff is responsible for that effort. So, and now with the online, I think it'll be even better. So, and very sustainable. So I'll entertain any questions at this point.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board? Any comments? Are there any comments from members, public members in the audience?
Ms. Pines, this is Erica Calderon, Executive Director. If I can elaborate a little bit on what Terry mentioned in terms of the reason why we weren't getting those renewals. One of the items that was missing in the renewal notice being sent out was the entity number. And that was what was preventing our licensees from going in and putting their application in through the Breeze system. Now the renewal notification is going to be, like I mentioned earlier, via email, and that email is going to be equipped with that entity number given to that licensee so that there's no issues of what's missing. That entity number is important. It essentially is what flags that F&P directly to that licensee. And so all of that's been taken care of. That's what we were missing. We didn't know what was preventing, and it was exactly the entity number, but that's been resolved, and that will be given to all of our licensees via email so that they have no issues going in and renewing their application. And just a little bit of an update, which Terry is not aware of this morning. I did get an email that our testing for this F&P application went through, and it's actually going to go live in Breeze in our next release, which is expected to be in 2 weeks. So just a late last minute update that it's essentially going to be our final application that we have currently, and that will make us completely automated through Breeze going forward.
Awesome. Great. Efficiency through technology. Are there any comments from anyone online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate and you're logged in, click on the question mark, type comment, send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Okay, next up, agenda item 12, enforcement program updates. Robin Matson, enforcement analyst.
Good morning, Madam Board President Pines and fellow members. My name is Robin Matson, and I am an associate governmental program analyst and have been with the board for almost 6 years. Can you hear me? Okay. The enforcement staff continues to receive supplemental training from Director Calderon in all areas of the enforcement process, and the unit is getting a lot stronger. We are conducting our own desk investigations, referring cases to the field, executing our own administrative citations, offering our own pre-accusation public letters of reprimand, referring our own cases to the Office of the Attorney General, and subsequently filing our own disciplinary orders. Our newest analyst, Ms. Andrea Harmon, has been doing an exceptional job with complaint intake and carrying her own caseload. Her prior employment experience in the healthcare system has really proven to add to the unit's success. Her addition has also greatly reduced overall caseloads and processing times in enforcement, which we are all very happy with. We are all prepared for the implementation of the new requirements for SB 815. The unit, in collaboration with the Breeze team, created new template letters to request impact statements and have updated Breeze with the new activity codes. Once the board receives funding, the unit will be fully prepared to implement the additional requirements. We continue to work with the Department of Consumer Affairs Breeze team daily to improve database efficiencies. This allows the enforcement staff to appropriately reflect the status of complaints and to obtain accurate statistics. In addition, we continue to work with the Division of Investigations, non-sworn unit on most of our cases that are being referred for further investigations. As you can see in our statistics, the number of cases being referred to the field continues to increase each quarter. Every month, the analysts receive individualized pending reports from Director Calderon. These reports highlight our high priority and short statute of limitation cases. In addition to receiving these reports, we meet weekly to conduct enforcement roundtable meetings with Director Calderon. The analysts can bring case files that require guidance, which lead to very productive group discussions. This has proven to be very beneficial to all of us, as it has provided the opportunity for additional training. Director Calderon also meets with us for one-on-one discussions. In terms of communication with our stakeholders, we continue to meet monthly with HQIU, the Attorney General's Office, and our legal counsel. For our program statistics, please refer to attachment 12A, which covers our enforcement program quarters 1, 2, and 3 statistics for fiscal year 2023-2024. Performance measure 1 covers the amount of consumer complaints and arrests and convictions received in comparison to last year. The board has seen a significant increase of about 35% in consumer complaints and a slight decrease of about 26% in arrest and conviction cases, bringing the total number of complaints received to an increase of 31% in comparison to last fiscal year. The board believes that the changes that were made to the Medical Board of California's website, because of our request to help redirect our consumers to our agency, may be accounting for this increase. We are receiving these complaints directly at a more expeditious timeframe, which was the goal. In turn, we are providing faster consumer protection. Performance measure 2 is the average number of days it takes for our analysts to initiate our enforcement complaints and acknowledge receipt. The target for this performance measure is 10 days, and we continue to be well under the target at a 3-day average for the past 3 quarters. Performance measure 3 is the average number of days it takes to complete investigations and enforcement action for cases not referred to the Attorney General's office. Case aging here fluctuates greatly because it takes an average of all cases, and 1 or 2 very complicated cases can skew these numbers drastically. These numbers include the timeline for HQIU investigative staff. The target for PM3 is 360 days, and as you can see, we are at about 218 days. Performance measure 4 is the average number of days it takes to complete investigations and enforcement actions that are transmitted to the Attorney General's office for formal action. Case aging in this category had a slight increase of about 17% in comparison to last year. So far this fiscal year, the board is well under its performance measure targets for 3 of its categories, which is amazing. PM4 is the measure that unfortunately the board has less control over, as this measure takes into consideration the timeline from the Attorney General's office, respondents' legal representatives, and the Office of Administrative Hearings. The 17% increase from last year can be attributed to the board referring more cases to the Attorney General's office. In addition, some of these cases have been found to be complicated in nature. The board currently has 439 pending enforcement cases. 68 of those are pending at HQIU and 17 at the Attorney General's office. The remaining are pending at the desk investigation level. As previously reported by Director Calderon, the goal of adding Ms. Harmon to the unit was to reduce our caseload, and we can successfully report that each analyst went from 145 cases to 109 cases each this quarter. Year to date, the board has filed 13 accusations or amended accusations, 1 accusation and petition to revoke probation, 8 citations, 11 public reprimands or public letter of reprimands, 11 decision orders with probation, 1 surrender, and 2 revocations. As you can see, enforcement is taking more action in comparison to last year. At this time, this concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Does any of the board members have any questions or comments on this report?
I have a question.
Yes.
All right, my question is,
Is
can
the
you hear
mic
me?
on? Yes. Okay.
My question is, performance measure 1, complaints received 35% up, but yet convictions, arrest received is 26% down. How do you explain that?
I'll let Erica answer that.
Hi. One of the things that we measure in terms of this is, basically we in general seem to be hand in hand with our consumer complaints that come in on a regular basis yearly. That seems to not fluctuate. The issue with the arrest notifications, most of those fluctuate themselves too. The only true explanation is that people are abiding. More awareness. We are, in our outreach, notifying our licensees to be careful, to not, Uber before you decide to get behind the wheel and, after a party. So it's not much of a big difference from last year. It really just fluctuates year to year. We're not seeing a huge drastic change. So the only thing that I can account to that is just awareness, what we're doing now to outreach and notify our licensees just to be more careful. The majority of our convictions are DUIs. And, with talking to our, and this is only taking in consideration those that are already licensed. We do fingerprint all of our applicants, and that is a different type of complaint. It's under an applicant complaint. So the only thing that I can account for is just being more aware and the fact that we are promoting and notifying our licensee population just to be a lot more careful.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If you could help me to just confirm my understanding of performance measure 4, cycle time attorney general. So that cycle time attorney general runs from the day the complaint is received until the Attorney General is done with the case. Is that correct?
I'm going to refer that
Yeah,
to
or-
Erica.
Dr. Lusak, on the bottom of the page here, we actually have the definitions on there. So performance measure 4 is the average number of days to complete the enforcement process from cases investigated and transmitted to the Attorney General's office. So this is all of your complaints that have gone through the investigation process and are formally transmitted for the filing of an accusation.
Okay, so that's when the Attorney General receives the complaint.
Correct.
Okay.
It starts tickling from the moment that the Attorney General receives it with that transmittal.
So our target is 540 days. The cycle time last year was 1,029 days, and that's gone up a little bit this year to 1,202. Am I reading that correctly?
You're reading that correct. And the explanation for that is we are transmitting a lot more cases to the Attorney General's now. So as, you know, it's taken in consideration all of those numbers. And so because we are transmitting more cases, and as mentioned before in prior meetings, we are dealing with a bit of a backlog, that's where that increase is coming from.
So it's two plus years is how long it takes us to get the case to the Attorney General. And then there are no performance metrics for Attorney General because they're a separate element.
That is correct.
So, okay. Do we have any idea of how, so this suggests that there's a number of aged cases still out there then?
There is a few. I'm happy to report that we're not looking at hundreds anymore. We're looking at roughly, we have about maybe 50 to 60 complaints that are still in that category that I would personally consider aged on our side. But the majority are either pending with an expert consultant or already at the end of stage with the investigation process. So those you'll be seeing coming very quickly our way. Some of them may result in public letter of reprimands, which you won't see because we have the ability to offer that ourselves internally. Some of them may result in citations. I foresee maybe a 10% going to the Attorney General's, but hopefully by the end of next year at this time, most of that will be taken care of.
Do you anticipate that the cycle time will decrease, will be moving towards the target?
Absolutely. As we start to work our cases a lot faster ourselves, that timeline will eventually go down. Our own personal target for enforcement to have our portion done of the desk investigation is 180 days. Walking into this enforcement unit, we were at 300, 400, 500 days. So if we can make it our own personal goal to try to get our desk investigation done with the 180 days, that is the goal that ultimately all of these numbers will line up. This is not uncommon. I do want to say that for other licensing boards, the Attorney General's portion, because it is capturing, the PM4 is capturing all of it. It's not uncommon for us to see this. Our investigations with DFI are still roughly, anywhere from 6 months to 8 months to complete. And then at the Attorney General level, you still have to account for another 6 to 8 months. So it's not uncommon for us to have these numbers. And they do fluctuate. One very difficult case, and what I mean by definition of a difficult case could be a licensee who may have more than one consumer complaint under investigation can skew these numbers dramatically.
So once again, PM4 is when the case gets to Attorney General.
That is correct.
But
transmitted.
But then they take however long they need to to bring that case to disposition.
Correct. Final disposition, which is ultimately probation, revocation, or surrender.
Thank you to you and for your leadership, and to your hardworking staff for continuing to focus in these areas. I know you're working very hard on it.
Thank you. I think one of the main key points that enforcement is really utilizing, and I can see them working day in and day out from, is their pending report. They are very appreciative of that report. That report is tracking not only the type of complaint that it is, the complexity, the urgency, statute of limitations. So it's a very colorful, I'm going to put that, very colorful Excel spreadsheet that they get, and our highlighted red cases are urgent cases, and they know that that's their priority on a daily basis. So they have a schedule, a weekly schedule of how they work their cases as well to keep the flow going, and it allows them to focus in every area. So Mondays and Tuesdays are dedicated to initial review of their initial cases, so brand new cases coming in. Wednesdays and Thursdays are working on their suspense, so following up on anything that they've requested, and then Fridays is transmittals to either D of I, the AG's office, or closures. So we keep a flow going on a weekly basis now.
I have one more question.
Okay.
How long does it take when complaint is made?
To
until
the
it
mic.
goes to
Can you?
Hello?
Is this mic? Okay, yeah, we can hear you
How
now.
long does it take until a complaint is made for it to go to an investigator's desk?
So we have two definitions. There is a desk investigation, and there is our field investigations. We have to acknowledge by law our complaints within 10 days. So we initiate and acknowledge them, and they get assigned to the analyst right away. With Andrea coming on board, she is doing a preliminary review. She's working with me to identify those that are non-jurisdictional, meaning cases that should not have been submitted to us, but rather medical board, board of pharmacy, Barber and Cosmo. So we're weeding those out right away from the very beginning so that our analysts can focus on what truly is jurisdictional for this board. To get assigned to the analyst, we're looking at 3 to 4 days after they've been received. And then our target, like I mentioned earlier, to send to the field is going to be 180 days. That's what we're shooting for.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the staff and your leadership for, drastically reducing these numbers in a fiscal year. It's been absolutely amazing. And so I want to just acknowledge and recognize all of you for the work that you've been doing over this past year. It's excellent. So do we have any questions from the member that we have here in the public? Any public members online who are interested in making a comment at this point?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that comment inside, click the question mark inside of the square, type the word comment in the text box, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, *3 to raise your virtual hand. Tracy Dominguez, I have sent a request to unmute your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am Tracy Dominguez. I'm with advocate with Consumer Watchdog. I noticed the 35% increase in consumer complaints that this board has received. I have to say that what this board is not taking into consideration is that we've had to do is advocate to assure that this board takes action on negligent doctors. We've had to take it upon ourselves, along with the help of Consumer Watchdog, to encourage other families to file complaints. We've had to do this with the death complaints coming back with no discipline action from this board, like my daughter's death complaint. As grieving families, we should not have to do this. We should be able to count on this board and staff to do its job, which is to investigate our deaths, complaints accurately, discipline the doctors involved. Until we see a change in this board, until you, as a board member, actually respond to us, we will continue to bring families to this board, encouraging them to file complaints. But again, as a grieving family, this should not be our job. It should be your job. I waited over almost an hour for you guys to start this meeting, and then I get cut off. I felt like this was heartless, and it hurt me very much because I am a grieving family, and that's why the public feels unheard. Count yourself blessed that you're not a grieving family. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Next individual identified as Maria Ibarra Navarrete. Going to send a request to unmute your microphone and set my timer to 3 minutes.
Hello, I am Maria Ibarra Navarrete. I am from San Jose. I'm a volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. I am happy to read that our new executive director is taking a hands-on approach with the enforcement process staff. It gives me hope that the future complaints will have a fair shot at accountability for their families, something I did not have. To read that this much work needed to be done to work on many enforcement issues signals to me that many of my beliefs that the enforcement process was not fair, that I had no real shot at accountability for my brothers was justified. I understand that being an advocate means influencing and making change to benefit other families. But what about our recent complaints? My complaint was recently submitted into this incredibly flawed system. How do we legitimately appeal the unfair process that I faced so recently? This is another issue that needs to be addressed. I understand that the required interview before a quality of care complaint is closed will partially address this issue, but we need to begin discussing how to officially appeal a decision to close a complaint. Thank you.
There are no further requests.
Yes. Okay, moving to agenda item 13, a presentation from on the board probation program with Ralph Correa, who's our probation monitor. And Ralph, you are between us and lunch.
All right, good afternoon,
No
board.
pressure.
You bet, you bet. Good afternoon, board. Thank you for having me today. All right, as you are aware, I am the newest, somewhat analyst that had been brought on with this board, and I am the probation monitor for the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. This report is intended to provide you an update with the probation program. Excuse me 1 second here. All right, to update you with the beginning portion, the website information. All probationary discipline and probationary summaries have been updated and are current on the board's website. Thank you to Director Calderon for updating that information. That was a long time coming, and I know that both the staff, public really wanted to know exactly what doctors are being reprimanded for, whatever their disciplinary actions are. Regarding the total number of physicians on probation, now, as a reminder, I began with this unit as of beginning of January of this year. As of today's date, there are 35 licensees currently on active probation. I completed a thorough audit of every case, and with that found, 32 were found to require compliance guidance. In review of the cases, the board's probation unit has implemented new probation unit procedures, and a timely overhaul of the entire program has been undertaken. This has resulted in the creation of 52 new documents to assist in a much more effective program. Now, because I'm old school, folks, I know the digital realm is here, but in order to show continuity with my side of the unit, I like to have pen and paper so I can see exactly what my people are doing. And that's to show both a time and date stamp to prove to me that in fact that they are in compliance. That's the reason why these new documents were created, so I can actually have those and create a record of each probationary physician. I've implemented intake interviews, which are done prior to or the effective date of each probation. So in other words, every time a physician starts their probation, I will have either A, face-to-face interaction with them, or it'll be some type of Zoom or telephone, depending on their location and, of course, my opportunity to travel. That is done so I can actually speak to the physician, discuss with them their decision in its entirety, to let them know exactly what they're required to do as per their decision, okay? I've also introduced what's called quarterly reviews. Those are done in a quarterly fashion. Each physician has been told and advised that I will be speaking with them in a quarterly manner. Those are literally to discuss with them all compliance, such as conditions, also to set reminders for them, and to discuss non-compliance issues. As of today, each probationer has received at least one quarterly review, and within this time, 4 probationers have completed their probation, and 4 new probationers were added these 2 past quarters, ending with a total of 35 probationers. 6 of them are tolling out of state and not receiving credit towards completion of their probation. Regarding noncompliance, 7 probationers were found not in compliance for a minimum of 6 months to 2 years, which resulted in immediate corrective action plan. Those 7 probationers were found to be in violation of the following: course enrollment, completion of course requirements, compliance of a practice monitor, and of course, cost recovery. Regarding the diversion program, 4 licensees on probation are participating in the board's diversion program. There were several matters that needed to be discussed in terms of the communication between the diversion program and, of course, OMBC. The board found that certain matters should have been better communicated to the board's probation monitor. Director Calderon and I have recently discussed these concerns with the contractor, and it has been agreed upon that the probation monitor will be included in all decision-making of board probationary referrals. This is extremely important, as you are aware that the board is ultimately responsible for the participant's licensure. At this time, this concludes my report, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question. So when you reviewed, you found 32 cases where compliance guidance was needed. Can you just explain that to us a little bit more, just so we, I think, have better clarity? When you say compliance guidance, what does that mean? That developed the 52 documents.
Okay, so in going through everybody's case file, it was found that records were not properly kept in accordance to show compliance with said physician. Because of that, it was hard for me to obtain and determine whether or not compliance was met or not. In order for me to force or to show compliance on the physician's side, I had to create these documents where the physician would be required to sign it, date it, and send it to me within a specific time frame. Then I could go ahead and start documenting exactly when something took place, when I can go forward with it, or if in fact disciplinary measures should incur after that. So that's the reason why I had to create these 52 extra documents. It's only to show continuity and their probationary needs to make sure that they're met.
Okay. Let's see.
Did that answer your question, ma'am?
It did answer my question.
Okay.
And then for the ones that were in the diversion program, where you and Ms. Calderon had to intervene, can you just give us an example what was falling short there? Just so we know what was falling short with Maximus.
Okay, it was found that in the past, the diversion program had very little interaction with the person who sat in my chair, person or persons. To me, this was, I believe it should not have taken place. I thought the board, since we are in control of each licensure, should have been notified of any actions that the diversion program considered that they thought that the physician themselves should do more, should do something different. And when I was, after again digging in deep and talking to the physicians, and then of course finding out everything that had gone on in the past, I put a complete stop to that and made sure that the diversion program notified me directly and let me know exactly what they thought was the best corrective action or action for each physician. And then I would go ahead and interject and determine whether or not, of course, that would be correct or not. But that's pretty much what came down to there.
Okay. And then my last question is the 7 probationers that were not in compliance for the 6 to 2 years that you have indicated, are any of those in Maximus program that you can remember?
No, yeah,
Okay.
I can remember none of those.
Okay.
Were in the Maximus
Okay.
the diversion program. That's
Perfect.
correct. No,
Okay.
no.
Now I'll go to my board members. Do anyone have any questions? Yes.
So, of the probationers in Maximus, were any of those individuals where you felt like you should receive communications from Maximus, were they situations of relapse? Did those situations involve relapse of the probationer?
No, there were minor deficiencies on the part of what the diversion program thought the physician should follow their specific guidelines, and it wasn't retrospect to the decision that was set for the probationer. They would implement specific things to a physician and literally take the physician off of practicing medicine and making these decisions without the board's knowledge, in which case that drew a red flag for me, because I have to determine whether or not, if a physician is not practicing while they're on probation, I have to include that in what we call told time. And so if they do that and take or tell a physician, hey, you got to take a couple of days off from work, they do not have the authorization to do that. That has to come directly from this board, either from myself or from my director. And so that's the reason why those direct conversations had to have been spoken with their head management or administrators to make sure that there was a complete understanding, and we had to be cohesive as far as an understanding of what they thought they should be doing versus what the board wants the physician to do.
Absolutely. And so what I understand you to be saying is you're essentially creating a personnel file of actions that impact the physician, and this provides documentation in the event that at some future date a review is necessary in order to bring a case to be reviewed or reconsidered, or some sort of new action needs to happen. You'll have a file of documentation. Is that basically what you're creating here?
That is absolutely correct. So I could have actual paper documents in front of me. In case there is what we call a petition to revocate a license, I need to have those records and be informed of whatever information that they're disseminating out to the physician, and not divulging that information to the board, which, again, that's the reason why
Yeah.
we had those conversations.
So in terms of the board's relationship with Maximus and your role as the probation monitor, so I see there's several layers or several areas of checks and balances, right? So most of these people, you know, they're enrolled in Maximus, and we're counting on Maximus to, you know, to take the actions which are necessary and verify that they're complying with Maximus's requirements. A lot of the board also requires a lot of folks on the diversion program to have a work site monitor, not a probation monitor, but a work site monitor. Your function as the probation monitor is representing the board, and I guess what concerns me is that all these functions work together, as opposed to someday in the future, these different elements saying, well, you were watching this, weren't you? No, that wasn't my job, that was your job. Oh no, that wasn't my job, that was your job. You know what I'm saying? There's, you know, we want to make sure there's a very fine net to make sure nothing falls through. I appreciate your efforts to make that, you know, to make that happen. Plus, we also have a diversion, another element is the diversion committee. So I guess I'm asking, it sounds like you're identifying some areas where this net can be tightened up.
That is correct, sir.
Yeah, and I appreciate your efforts in that area. So, of the 7 probationers not in compliance from 6 months to 2 years, I mean, that seems to me to be pretty blatant. What sanctions? I mean, usually the stipulated agreements say course enrollment within 30 days, completion of course requirements, other, cost recovery, unless there's a program negotiated. So if folks were non-compliant for 6 to 24 months, what kind of sanctions did those people receive? I mean,
Dr. Lusak, if I may step in, there's been a lot said, so I want to take it back to our conversation, and I'll be happy to answer that question as well. In terms of our relationship with our current vendor, one of the things that is good to note at this moment is that we do have a contract agreement with our vendor that we revise on every 4 to 5 year basis. Right now, we're currently in the midst of that. So we are meeting with other folks from other licensing boards that utilize our vendor to establish our contract agreement. And this is a great opportunity. There is a section that is going to be a board-specific section where we can identify how we would like our program to be ran. Our licensees that are part of the diversion program have to abide by 2 separate contracts. There is the discipline order that the board imposes, which includes that they participate in the Maximus diversion contract. However, the vendor also establishes their own agreement, so these tend to overlap a lot. One of the things that we're working on with the vendor is to make sure that they don't overlap, and that they're identical to what we're asking of our licensees. In the prior years, our predecessors in the stipulations were not including all of the terms and conditions with the uniform standards, based on the fact that the vendor was abiding by those uniform standards and their agreements. We're actually changing that now, and you're going to see those in some of those decisions coming your way for voting that will include those in there now. So practice monitors, worksite monitors, drug testing, in addition to the requirement of the program, so that there's no miscommunication as to what the board is looking for this person to have as a term and condition. So that's one of the things, and like I mentioned, in our current contract agreement, we are working, Ralph and I are meeting with folks, and we're putting together what we would like, how our program to be ran. One of the things is that communication, having that probation monitor a part of every decision making. You asked earlier if there was issues that were, in terms of relapses of concern. We didn't find that of an extreme of an issue. We do get notified right away if there's a positive, if there's an out of range or dilute drug test. Mainly what the issue is that most of our licensees, because of the prior lack of communication with our probation monitor, they tend to go to Maximus for everything and forget about the board. One of the conditions that Ralph mentioned in terms of tolling is that if they leave out of the country or the state more than 30 days, we need to be notified. And those are the things that we were noticing, is that they were notifying our vendor, but not notifying our probation monitor. And so those are the things that we're working on with our current vendor to bring it all together, to make sure that when they enlist an applicant or they bring on an applicant into their program, that there is a mutual understanding that you're not only dealing with the vendor, but you're also dealing with the board, and that we need to essentially receive all of the information for vice versa. So we do meet with our current vendor on a monthly basis. We're establishing that relationship. I think there was just more of getting it all on paper, like this is what we want going forward. So that's what we're working on. And then to answer your question about what parameters do we have in terms of those that are non-compliance, in this situation, I hate to say it, but we need to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I think that a lot of it was just lack of guidance. We're noticing that now with Ralph doing intake interviews, I mean, that is the most crucial element of a new probationer coming into the program, to have that interaction so that they know and understand what they're looking forward for the next couple of years, and there's no questions. One of the forms that Ralph implemented is an agreement. After that agreement, once he meets with them, he makes our probationer sign that everything was discussed, that there's no questions, there's no clarifying questions that are needed, and that they understand that they're going to be reviewed quarterly. So I think that is going to essentially solve all of our issues that we did encounter, that we did notice, is just that constant communication with them. Not to say that we're holding their hand, but I think there is some responsibility on the board for us to make sure that they understand what they're they're having to do, and that we assist in that and educate them and be there to support.
Thanks so much. Just to place my questions in context, I think that, particularly in the context of diversion, I think that's one of the areas where the public perhaps is least confident in all the consumer board's ability, but particularly with physicians and other healthcare professionals. And our responsibility is to ensure that folks in the diversion program are compliant and making progress. And that's not to say that rehabilitation is not an important element of what the diversion program should do, but given that our first responsibility is to the public, I'm grateful for your attention and focus in this very important area.
Thank you. Are there any comments from additional board members? Are there any comments from members of the public in the room? Any comments from members of public online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside of the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. Or if you're calling in from a phone, you can press *3 to raise your virtual hand. I do have two individuals who have their hands raised. Kimberly Turbin, I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone and set my timer to 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Kimberly Turbin. I'm from Stockton, and I am a volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. We appreciate the work that your probation monitor has done in auditing the probation program and meeting with the probationary doctors and working to put into compliance the 32 out of 35 doctors on probation that were not initially following the requirements of probation. We have two concerns though. How long have the probationary doctors have been allowed to not follow probation and ignore their probationary orders? Secondly, we have concerns about your 4 probationary doctors that are enrolled in the diversion program. The uniform standards require the diversion program to report any minor or major violations to the board. So if matters were not discussed with the board and information was not given to the board, then the diversion program was not following the uniform standards. That means that the diversion and this board were putting patients at risk. What is your plan to ensure that the diversion program follows and utilizes the uniform standards as they are required by law? Thank you.
This is the moderator. Next individual, Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm going to send a request. Unmute your microphone.
Hello, I'm Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I'm with Consumer Watchdog. I want to thank, first and foremost, I want to thank Ralph for his work. This report was incredibly disturbing. Not surprising, but incredibly disturbing. My question, do you have more than one probation monitor to work with probationary doctors throughout the state? I understand that you have 35 doctors currently on probation, but your report states that the monitor initially found 32 doctors out of compliance. We greatly appreciate the audit and the work done to put the doctors on probation back into compliance, but it seems like a lot of work for one person. Also, if a doctor on probation breaks one of the rules of probation, it was my understanding that meant that the order could be terminated and that other discipline, such as possible revocation, could be implemented. If not termination of probation, what is the corrective action plan for breaking probation? Overall, it appears that these physicians on probation were not being monitored. Regarding the 4 doctors on probation that were in the diversion program, what type of matters were not being discussed and for how long? What information was not given to the board? This information implies that the board's diversion program was not following the uniform standards, which requires the diversion program to report any minor or major violations to the board. This is implying that Maximus is not following the law by not following uniform standards. We would like to see a report of which uniform standards were not followed, which uniform standards were broken, and how long did it take the diversion program to report the violations to the board, and what was the outcome. I just have to remind you, and Ralph was absolutely right about the public not having any confidence in the diversion program, and I just have to let this board know that these uniform standards came to be and became a law because of the death of a 36-year-old man by the name of Lord Montserrat. That's why we have uniform standards. That's why we fought so long to get these uniform standards and put into regulations, and we really expect them to be followed. Thank you.
Moderator, there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. I want to thank everyone for their comments and thank Ralph for his presentation and what you are doing here at the board for us. And I would like to now say we're going to break for lunch. We have it scheduled for 45 minutes, so if we can return back at 1:45, it's 1:02 now. Thank you. To resume our Osteopathic Medical Board of California meeting. And we're going to start with agenda item 14. Oh, okay, start over? Okay. We are resuming the Osteopathic Medical Board of California board meeting. And we are going to move to agenda item 14, update on CME regulatory package. Ms. Terry Thorfinson, who's making her way here. A quorum? Okay. Okay, we're going to do a roll call.
Gora Damian,
Present.
Dr. Buhari,
Present.
Dr. Luzak,
Present.
Andrew Marino,
Present.
Denise Pines.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Great. Okay, Ms. Thorfinson, are you ready for present your report?
I am.
Okay, awesome.
I don't know how long it'll be, so I wanted to make sure I was ready.
Okay.
So I wanted to start out by saying that I did something different in this, in the materials for you, compared to what I've done before. So I want you to point it out, give me feedback after it's done to see if that's a good way or we return to the way it has been.
Terry, excuse me, sorry, this
Yeah.
is agenda item 14, the update on the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, update for regs. Our CME citation package is still at the DCA review and approval level. Once it is approved by the DCA director, it goes on out to the other agencies for final approval and posting. So we're still at that DCA approval level for that particular reg.
That's it.
That's it for that one.
That's it for that report.
Uh-huh.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments? Do we have any comments from public in the room? Any comments from public on agenda item 14 online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside of the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. If you are calling in via a phone, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. We will move then to agenda item 15, discussion and possible action on legislation. Ms. Thorfinson, please continue.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, board members. As I was saying, I did something different in your materials than I usually do. And the change was, it's in the past, I've done very small informational background analysis of each particular bill. For decision makers, it doesn't give you a lot of information to go on, and you are the decision makers. So in the context of public discourse, which is what legislation invites, I wanted to provide you with more information, whether we take positions or not, that you would not so much rely on my lead on a particular position or which bills we should pay attention to. I have a few exceptions to that at the beginning. I've ordered them in terms of the ones that I think we should take action on first, and then I'm going to go through those and talk individually to each bill, and then I'm going to open it up to see what other bills board members would like to discuss. Okay, so the first one is SB 223 Skinner, and this is creating an Arizona physician registration to perform abortions. It's essentially a license exemption, and it's being proposed limited to one, only Arizona physicians to provide treatment to only Arizona residents. So if you hear that, that sounds kind of good in terms of license exemption, that we're not allowing an out-of-state doctor to be practicing on a California patient. So in that sense, I think the author Skinner, was very balanced in the way that she provided this essentially license exemption. So the idea is coming with, we've seen other bills that the governor and the legislature have done what they call creating California a sanctuary state for reproductive health care since the Roe v. Wade decision was overturned. And it is a crucial role that I think that California is playing in this. They're trying to be a good neighbor and trying to provide access to physicians as well as their patients. And for the way that the reproductive health is turning out is physicians are as much targeted with prosecution as their patients are, who suffer from not getting the care that they need at the time they need when they're pregnant. So allowing this license exemption, temporary, I think is a good neighbor type of nod to Arizona physicians and to their patients. So under the registration, there's no charge. It's essentially a license exemption. DCA is setting up the database that'll be like a portal that people can apply for this registration. And they are basically allowing people to apply, and then if they have the documentation, our board looks at the documents and approves the registration. So although I think of it as an application, there is paperwork that's involved, and the law itself does have some teeth into it about, misrepresenting and fraud in making those statements on the registration, but it's also trying to make it as easy as possible, not charging a fee. I bring that to your attention because as a board who relies on revenue and basically charging fees to support what the board's operation is, that's not something that we would normally like in terms of a policy, and would always monitor whether it's going to be a trend or not. But for this case, it's being proposed by the governor. The legislature's behind it. It's moved very fast. It's an urgency bill which requires 2/3 of the legislature to approve. And just based on the first House vote, it got out with all but 13 votes. So they're at that 2/3 urgency clause margin. I expect that the next House, when it votes, which is its next vote, it'll be approved with the 2/3. And then when it gets to the governor, he will sign it as soon as possible. There's been many joint press conferences with the legislature, legislative authors on this bill, and the governor's commitment to sign it. So the status of this bill is that DCA is going to have this up and going as soon as June 8th. So there's an anticipation that the governor will sign it by that time in terms of how rapid it's going through the legislature. And I am not making a recommendation on this bill. I'm leaving it up to board members to see. And the reason is there is a good cause behind it. So if board members feel strongly about it, this would be a good way to say, yeah, we support it. I, as your policy person, just don't like having free stuff given out like registration and no fees. But, that may be just me. So I want to open it up to the board to discuss what do they think about this bill. Do you want to take a position or not, or what?
I would like to add, though, as the licensing manager, in doing a little review of the stats, there is probably only about a 5,000 licensee population in Arizona. Taking that into account, I don't see more than 10% of those being OBGYNs. And still, not all of that 10% would be offering abortion services. With that being said, I think the financial hit is very minimal for us. And in terms of the licensing process, it's going to be very similar to the federal bill for the expedition of military personnel federally. So with the way that portal works is it is above board for all of the boards under DCA's helm. It's something that's tracked and monitored by their staff. The only thing that my staff would have to do is go in, ensure that there are no applications that are pending approval. And even with that, the review process is very, very short. They only need to ensure that a license, verified license from the state of Arizona is available, and that the applicant is attesting to the fact that they have performed some type of abortion services within the past 2 years from that point of request. I think in the documentation at the time, we were considering a 15-day turnaround time. Med Board is requesting a 5-day time frame. However, it's not a very, I'm sorry, I guess it's not too impactful to my staff and other applications that they're processing that are requiring expedite or just being processed in general.
Thanks for sharing that. That was going to be one of the questions. Do any board members want to make a comment?
I just had a question about enforcement. I'm reading in here, it says the board does have enforcement jurisdiction over the Arizona physicians while they're here under this program, correct?
Yes. The legislation that's been creating these registrations does include that jurisdictional piece in there. And so it's in there.
And that's for providing that service in the state of California.
Yes.
So they can't apply for that California exemption and do something in Arizona and avoid the penalty that the Arizona law has.
I hope not.
Yeah.
But the idea.
I'm just wondering if these are things that may come up. You never know.
Well,
To clarify, if those services are in here in California, Dr. Bahari, the jurisdiction would be ours. And then we would have to also make sure that whatever action we take, that we do report it to the licensing board in Arizona as well. If it's an action that was done by the licensing in Arizona, it would be Arizona's jurisdiction.
Yeah, so all the jurisdiction remains the same. And so the idea is a very narrow scenario where both physician and patient come to California only. So if, from Arizona's jurisdictional perspective, if the physician provides that care in Arizona where it's banned, then they could be, what the idea is to escape from the consequences of prosecution.
Yeah, I was just trying to imagine a scenario. Let's say they did something and now because it's banned, the Arizona licensing board has a sanction on them. Now they come to California. Now they're not necessarily in good standing with the Arizona board. What is the law saying? That regardless of what the Arizona board says, if it's in response to performing abortion services, that we would provide the
exemption?
Yeah.
Well, as Machiko talked about, one of the requirements is that they do have to have a license and it does have to be in good standing. In Arizona.
Right, so they couldn't have violated the ban in Arizona and then try to escape to be able to continue those services here in California.
Well, it would be each scenario. So if they violated the ban, that would be only in Arizona. So then Arizona takes care of whatever, prosecution or consequences there. When they come here, depending on the stage of the enforcement actions, we may or may not know about it. So if we don't know about it, they may look like they're in good standing. They're not going to escape the ban because of the separate jurisdiction. Arizona has its own jurisdiction to be able to enforce their laws. California has its own jurisdiction. And I think the public safety element, at least that I think is important in these license exemptions, is does the board retain jurisdictional authority. For the military one, it was designed, DCA very carefully negotiated that jurisdiction, even though it wasn't a licensure per se. This one, Senator Skinner is doing the same kind of similar balancing to ensure that there's consequences and jurisdiction. So I think public safety wise, that's good in terms of the license exemption. Now, you remember the bill last year that we opposed that was for that telemedicine? That didn't have jurisdiction for us, So Not all bills do, but this one does. So I think it's well designed. But yeah, that's, you know, when I think about what is the scenario, you can't really, this is just a policy discussion, but you maybe know better, how would a physician come to California and be able to secure a treatment facility? Because this is only a temporary license. So from June 8th, when the portal will be up, it was designed to only last and expire until December 31st of this year. So then I think what the idea is that it would provide temporary cover for this year. Maybe the legislature looks at it and extends it, I don't know. But if the physician was like, no, I just don't want to keep practicing in Arizona under this, it would give them that year to apply for a California license. Their patients would be not served because they're still in Arizona. They could come to, you know, across the border, as many women are, to go to a state that they can get the full reproductive health services that they need.
Just for the other board members' consideration, I believe about a third of abortions in the United States now are medical abortions that don't require being at a facility or.
Can you explain medical?
Pills.
Pills.
Pills. So previously, Planned Parenthood would require an inpatient visit and ultrasound to verify dates, but that I don't believe is the standard of care. A lot of patients will just obtain these medications through a telemedicine provider, or even not a physician or clinician provider, take the medications and essentially have a self-induced abortion. In the emergency department, people would present, and they present just like a miscarriage. So as you know, as a clinician, you know, taking care of the patient, I can't tell the difference. So anyway, the nuance I'm trying to share with people is that, you know, if you're thinking about this as being, oh, they're going to come over here, you know, find a facility, that may not be actually what's happening, and you know, they may just be writing prescriptions.
Yeah, that's a really good point to put in context. That's what I was thinking down that same line, so thank you for that clarification.
Dr. Bahari, I do want to point to a section in the bill language, letter K. It states, for the purpose of this section, good standing means an active license to practice medicine with no restrictions or limitations on the license in effect, and no accusation or similar filing initiating disciplinary action is pending, unless that accusation or filing is of an offense solely related to the performance of an abortion in that state. Wanted to point that out for you.
So do we have a motion to support? Does any board member want to move forward with supporting this bill?
Terry, my understanding is it's going forward as is, correct?
Yeah, if you're worried about will this bill go without your support, it will. It's pretty much a done deal. So the taking the position in support would just show support for the concept of reproductive rights and protecting doctors that provide it and patients that need that care.
So, okay, so are we deciding not to take a position?
I don't know if it's necessary to.
Okay, so we're not going to, looks like we're not going to take a position on this bill and let it move forward at the pace that it is moving.
Okay, so that'll be, I'm going to put that down in my list when I update you. By the next meeting, it'll probably be signed into law. I'll just have neutral or watch. Okay? Okay, next bill is AB 765, which is from last session. This was the title protection bill that is dead now. The author is now promoted, and that bill had just died. And the new bill, so we had a position of oppose on that. So that bill, I raised at the January meeting, bringing that as the only bill we had a position on into this, new year. And now that bill is dead. So the new vehicle for the title protection is the very next bill, which is SB 1451 by Ashby. And this one clarifies for physicians and surgeons that they have to be licensed to be able to use the word doctor, MD, DO. And normally you'd think, well, that's good. But for us, it doesn't exactly solve what we were concerned with the last bill, which is what it needs is the word, in addition to licensed physician and surgeon, we need to also include the osteopath as a title to also be limited to those that are licensed as an osteopathic physician. So without that, we still have this gaping hole that this bill, if it was signed into law, would create, because right now, the reason they're doing this bill is because there isn't really clarification in the current statute with DO and MD. Okay, so it would create that clarification. That would be good in terms of title protection, gets rid of the confusion with provider or consumers, like what is this person saying they are and what kind of services are they doing. So that part is good. But for osteopath, there are a group, because we're not, Denise, as you mentioned, what some of the states are doing with foreign grads. In the osteopathic profession, only the U.S. produces allopathic trained osteopaths. Everybody else falls short of that. So that's why this board doesn't entertain licensure from any other country than the U.S. They have to be trained in the U.S. so that they have the same training. So that means people that are coming here, maybe didn't do the research or they want to be here in this country anyway, that are using the word osteopath or osteopathy, and they're foreign trained, they're never, unless they are domestically trained at a medical school, they are never going to qualify to become a DO in this country. And that's purposeful. But the gap is that if it's the word osteopath as a title is omitted, like we objected in the last bill, it leaves open the fact that these foreign trained people could continue to misrepresent themselves as a trained osteopath. And yes, they might have been trained overseas, but the preliminary research I did for last bill was that it varies tremendously, the quality and the level and the subject matter for training. So the board has, I think, in the American Association of Osteopathy has made a good decision to say only U.S. are eligible for licensure in any of the 50 states. But we still have foreign trained osteopaths, and they believe that they are empowered to be able to use the word osteopath. Now, the history of the title, when I did research with the AOA, they were saying that they moved away in the evolution from when they first started to first use osteopath. But then they started when I think the evolution of more licensure and equality with the MDs came into play, maybe 50s, 60s-ish. Then they kind of abandoned, but not totally, the word osteopath. And so the preferred professional term would be physician and surgeon, osteopathic physician and surgeon. But osteopath is still claimed by the AOA to be a term and a title for licensed osteopath. And I think it's our duty as the board to protect it. So I have not talked to the author. I am optimistic, since it's a separate author, that maybe if I broach it, that she may not have any reason to not include the word osteopath in there, which would be great. It would solve our problem. Because the barrier last time had to do with who was having the bill and who objected to it. That may not be in play this time, I'm hoping, but I do need a position in order to be able to negotiate with the authors on this. And I am recommending an oppose, and I think I go into why oppose, but you could modify that, is the oppose would get the legislators' attention. A board who opposes something that is supposed to go to the very essence of the board, which is licensure and the definition of licensure. So having a board that is involved in this title protection oppose it, I think may get the attention to have it be changed. And once it's changed, we remove our opposition. We could do a more gentler oppose unless amended. I'm, as I said in my memo, I think we need some muscle in this one. This one should have been a no-brainer, and yet a year and a half later, we're still dealing with it. So that's my recommendation for that particular bill, is a position, and then your choice, oppose or oppose unless amended.
Yes.
How does the board communicate with the author?
I call up the author's office, email their staff, and say, hey, my board has a position on your bill, and I'd like to speak with you. A lot of times you don't get to actually speak with the author. You know, speak with their chief of staff or ledge director, which is usually, you know, sufficient, because that's the way the legislature runs. And being able to weigh in both with the author, that would be my first contact, to make them aware, because it's a professional courtesy that if we're out there with a position, we need to let the author know ASAP. The next critical one would be both committees, Business and Professions Committee consultants, because they write up the analysis for this.
So you would communicate for the board?
Yes.
Are we aware of what OPSC's position on this is? Is it oppose or oppose unless amended?
You know, I don't know if they have a position. They were supposedly, they didn't have a position last year. They were supposed to run a bill this year. I haven't seen a bill, so I'm assuming, well, based on their hesitancy last year, I can't assume that what their position is, but they're in whatever capacity supportive of the idea. Whether they actually have a position, I don't know.
Okay, and just one last point for consideration. In other settings with other advocacy organizations, the differentiation between oppose unless amended and oppose unless amended leaves the door open and is very clear about what the organizations, the advocacy organization's intent is. Taking a strict oppose position can at times foreclose further discussion.
Do we have any other discussion? Yes.
Ms. Pines, maybe we can introduce comment after every bill, just in case we have speakers on the phone that would wish to make any comments on any particular bills.
Okay.
So we can ask for public comment in the room first and then go online.
Okay, I think, should we take a motion on this first before we do that?
Motion first.
Yeah.
Motion
Yes.
first.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a motion.
Okay.
We are being recommended for a motion of oppose. I'm going to make a comment here. I agree. Here we have another bill that didn't take into consideration what we wanted. So I think this is something we have to stand firm on so that people understand what our position really is. So that's my position on this as well. Typically, Michael, like you are, is doing oppose if amended, but when you have a second bill that has left out this again, and knowing that there was a first bill, knowing that we had an oppose on the first bill, you didn't, bother to contact the board to discuss or anything, means they're not trying to give us have a voice. So I think we have to be very firm and hold steady on our position, because this is who we are.
So I want to clarify that we aren't foreclosed if we took an opposed position from continuing to negotiate with the author. So it's really just sort of how the board feels about the temperature. Either position, oppose or oppose unless amended, works. to get the job done and allow me to negotiate on the board's behalf with legislators.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to oppose.
Second?
Aye.
Okay, great. Are there any comments from the public in the room? Moderator, any comments from the public online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A
This
is
meeting
now
is
open.
being
The
recorded.
instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, please click on the question mark inside of the square, type the word comment, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, *3 to raise your virtual hand. So at this time, I have a request from Holly Makris. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone. And after that, we do have another request for public comment. So Holly, I'm setting my timer to 3 minutes. I sent your request.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, this is Holly. Hi, everybody. Sorry I can't be with you in Vallejo today, but thank you for being at Toro. We do have a position on this. This bill, obviously, right now we're in a watch and we're concerned. We feel the exact same things that you all are feeling. Terry, if you do remember, we did have an opposed to the bill last year. We worked very hard on getting the language in that bill, and now that the bill is dead, we're very happy about that. We are going to be working on another bill for 25 season to start working on the osteopath language that is protected by the AOA and OPSC. It is our language, not any other person's language. So as it goes to this bill, we have a watched and concern. I would really like to reiterate, as I have done in the past at your meetings, that the OMBC, Terry, be working with OPSC and Matt Back, our lobbyist, so that we can go to these legislators in a joint effort on the same bills that we know we're also going to be opposing, or at least watching or wanting to be okay with, I guess. So if I can at least make that comment again and that ask, it'd be really appreciated that we could work together on these legislative items, seeing how that's what we're here to do. Do you have any questions of me?
Thank you.
This is the moderator, Kimberly Turbin. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, were we gonna public comment on agenda number 15?
Yeah, we're currently going through several of the bills right now. We'll ask for public comment after each bill that we go through.
Oh,
so
okay,
the comments right now are for, I think I may have skipped. SB
1451.
Oh, SB 1451. Right. Sorry, I advanced to the next one. Are there any additional comments from the public online for?
This is the moderator. No additional requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. Okay. We need to do a roll call.
Gora Damian.
Yes.
Dr. Buhari.
Yes.
Dr. Luzak.
Yes.
Andrew Marino.
Yes.
Denise Pines.
Yes.
Motion carried.
We need public comment on this before I move on.
We just had it.
Hmm?
We just had it.
Oh, we just had it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. Good. Okay, so I'm on the next one. AB 2164. This is a bill that is targeting the boards, both MBC and OMBC's question on impairment. Some of you, I think Dr. Bahari may remember, this issue was raised several years ago, and FSMB studied this issue, and the issue was the boards are required to assess and basically determine whether somebody that's applying for a license is impaired to practice medicine, okay? So the way that our board and the Med Board asked that question years ago, People criticized that that was, you know, maybe not the best wording. People felt that it stigmatized or made applicants nervous. And subsequently, and then when the board talked about it, because the FSMB was studying it, we deferred and said, let's see what FSMB says, right? Am I correct, Dr. Bahari?
Yes.
So then the Med Board had come up with some language, and it was kind of hailed as like a good, you know, good wording. And that's the current wording that we have in our bill, in our applications. But what I later found out is that in working with the Med Board, they have more questions than we do. We just have the one question. And our question, I think, is correct in balancing the public safety protections of asking applicants, are they impaired to practice medicine? And the way we ask it is we don't just generally say, do you have some kind of condition, period. We say, do you have a condition that impairs or limits your ability to practice medicine? And those words all go together and modify each other. So if the answer is no, I'm not impaired, then the answer on the application is no, okay? And so our approach to the bill is slightly different than, similar but slightly different than the Med Board's, because they have language that they probably want to take out. And they're doing a series of town hall meetings to listen to advocates about the language. And then they're going to negotiate either amendments to the bill or whatever after their board meeting and positions. From our perspective, our language is good. It balances the best of everything. It is just to the point and asks, do you have a condition that impairs your ability to practice medicine or in any way limit it? Period. So our position, I think, and I will need a position for this, is that our language is good. We don't need to change it. We're open to any kind of wording, which we haven't heard, nor have advocates or anybody targeted our board's wording. Most of the focus has been MBC. So I would recommend having a support if amended, because one of the things that is kind of coming into play is the wording of the bill, if you've looked at, talks about what you can't say, that you can't require somebody to disclose something that is not really an impairment. Okay, well, our language doesn't do that. We only ask for, do you have a condition, not an impairment, a condition that impairs your ability to practice medicine or limit the practice of medicine in any way, period. And I think in that sense, we comply with the first two sections of the bill. The last section of the bill, which I'm calling out, is the section which is sub C, which says if an applicant discloses that, and I'm on page 5, if an applicant discloses that they currently have a condition or disorder that impairs their ability to practice medicine, the board shall provide the applicant with information on the availability of a probationary or limited practice license. Well, NBC has that kind of a license. We do not. We just have a full license. So we would want to be exempted out of that section because it doesn't apply to us. So that would be the amendment that I would want to negotiate, is that whatever you do, clarify that that section doesn't apply to OMBC. For the reasons that are very practical, we just don't have a license, a limited or restricted license. And makes it sort of a different action step for NBC, because since they do have a restricted or limited license, they publicize that in their application. We don't, that's why we don't publicize it. We just ask the question. And the question that we ask is required by law to ask. So we're not just putting in a question because we want to, because we feel very strong about protecting public safety. We are following the statute. And I think that I would like to be able to communicate that to the legislature, that we, I think, have good language. and that we don't have a restricted license, so we need to be amended out of that particular sub-C section. And so I would recommend a support, if amended, to this.
Do board members, comments?
So, along with the board materials, screenshots were sent along of,
Of what are, yes, good.
so.
Good to point out.
So here, there's the question that you described. Do you have any
Mhm.
condition which in any way impairs or limits your ability to practice medicine with reasonable skill and safety? And then there are other conditions.
Mhm.
So it says, including but not limited to any of the following. Do we still ask, those specific questions here, with, listing those?
Yes.
This is
For-
what it shows?
So for the two handouts that are screenshots, the 15A handout is for the physician and surgeon license. And yes, we do have those 4 conditions that we ask. The second attachment is 15B, is the postgraduate training license, and we do not ask about the conditions.
Dr. Lusak, and just to clarify, if you answered no, it doesn't proceed to the following questions. So if you answer yes, then the following questions are asked.
Is that the same on the postgraduate training
Correct.
license as well?
Oh,
No.
Machiko
Not at
can
this point.
clarify that part.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, because of mapping issues on the back end and time constraints, initially it was supposed to mirror what was on the full unrestricted license application. However, it does not. So it's more basic on the PTL application, just straight to the point. Do you have any
Yeah.
conditions that limit your ability to practice with no
Okay,
follow-up questions at the
just
time?
at risk of being slightly tangential, it'd be nice if both of them were just. these
No,
three.
right, absolutely, and that was the intent.
Just
But
haven't got there yet.
because we were upon the PTL timeframe and a lot of the keying that has to be done on the back end for Breeze, it just didn't happen that way. But we intend on mirroring the question.
So you're gonna add those categories to the PTL, or you're gonna delete them?
No, the full unrestricted will match the PTL.
Okay, so
questions.
we'll just have that short.
Straight,
brief
yes.
Statement.
Yes.
We get feedback from the board, this is
That's
part
what's
of the
happening.
essence of this discussion, is would the board support, which version? Would you support the current version with the conditions if they ask yes, or get rid of the conditions and just a yes or no answer like we have in the postgraduate training?
A yes or, in my opinion, yes or no answer with an explanation if yes, and just letting the person, explain what their issues are.
So you would support the current version with the physician and surgeon?
I don't think it's necessary to ask the subordinate question.
He supports the PTL.
PTL,
Right.
okay, that's what I wanted
And
to clarify.
To be fair, in review, if there are any questions that my staff do have with regards to that, it goes for enforcement review. So it's not stopping with our review. We do our due diligence in ensuring that there's consumer protection first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think that is some wiggle room and removing, if the board wants us to go in that direction, the conditions, because we have this, if somebody says yes, there is going to have to be some paperwork and investigation as to what's behind the yes. So do we gain, for purposes of this issue in this bill, having those conditions on our existing application or not? That would be the feedback I would like, clearly, and then we can decide from Machiko's perspective which one to use, the shorter version or the longer version in terms of the question on the condition.
Do we have any other comments from the board members?
You're recommending opposition to this?
No, support if amended.
If amended, okay.
So more gentle than the the title protection. This one we're wanting to help in a positive way, and so we could in our own, the legislation right now doesn't require us to change in its current form the more detailed question right now. We're in compliance with what they say. So the discussion here would be, because the board has had a sensitivity about the issue, now the research has been done, it would be good to hear from the board what version of the question you all feel comfortable with us asking. And the reason I put it to you is, and the way that I initially was sort of in opposition of the bill, is that it's kind of overreaching, because the words of applications are typically regulatory in nature, which is the board's creation, not the legislature. So the board creates regulations, the legislature creates laws. So the legislature creates the law that says we have to ask such a question, but how we word it is the board's purview. And so that's why your input specifically on that will be very pivotal. And as Machko said, based on what the board decides, then she'll, make the changes accordingly.
So we're being asked two questions here then.
I was going to just say that, Dr. Lusak. So the position that we want to take is in terms of just making sure that the language that Terry pointed out in terms of the limited licensure is not applicable for us, to make sure that that's written for that format. That's the amendment. The other part of us internally working our kinks with our applications, we can do that ourselves. This is part of our ongoing BREEZE projects that we work on a weekly basis with our BREEZE team. And from what I'm hearing, most of you are supporting the PTL version. If the answer is yes to that question, we can ask for an attachment to be included for an explanation coming from the licensee. That's an option, and I think that would be the best option for us, moving forward. We don't necessarily have to ask those questions. We can leave it for them to give us what that explanation is.
So can I get a motion?
So I'll make a motion to support, if amended, to exclude that language that doesn't apply to our board.
Mm-hmm.
Number one.
Okay.
Second.
Great, we have a second. Okay. Do we have any comments from the public in the audience? Any comments from the public online?
The Q&A is now open. The instructions will be on the screen. There you go. And if you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside the square, type the word comments into all panelists, or if you're calling in, press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. I do have quite a few. Give me just a second as we go through these. So Holly, I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, hello again. I just want to point out, if we're supposed to be seeing something on the screen, we are not seeing anything. All I see is a white screen, so I just want to put that out there. This bill, we are also watching very closely. I do believe that CMA is opposing it. I think that that's the direction we would go in as well. But we will take back, I will take back what your comments were here to our lobbyists and our committee and have a further discussion on how to move it forward. So thank you for this conversation. It got a little confusing there a bit for what you all were agreeing to, but I appreciate the conversation.
Next individual, Abhiyana Narayan, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I sent a request to unmute you.
I'm Dr. Narayanan. I'm a UCSF family medicine resident at San Francisco General Hospital, and I'm also a proud member of the Committee of Interns and Residents, SEIU. I'm calling in today to ask the OMBC to change the mental health question on licensing applications so that it encourages treatment and support this legislation. The board's analysis of the mental health question is that it doesn't stigmatize seeking mental health care, but as a current resident physician, I can tell you that is definitely not true. Surveys indicate that 1 in 4 medical interns report having suicidal thoughts, but 50% of resident physicians report reluctance to seek mental health care due to licensure concerns, and I've seen this myself with my co-residents. As a family physician, I'm trained to diagnose and treat anxiety and depression in my patients, and I do so nearly every day, encouraging my patients to seek the support they need despite societal stigma. Yet for many of us residents, especially with the incredible stresses that come with residency training, we see the same symptoms within ourselves but are scared to seek treatment due to the concern that the MBC and OMBC will enact the very same stigma that we are working to dismantle as healthcare professionals. I've seen this firsthand with the boards requesting invasive personal medical documentation of the history and nature of medical treatment and names of medical providers of co-residents and delaying licensure, intimidating colleagues from seeking care for fear of investigation and denial of licensure. We've been advocating for years to either remove this question or change the phrasing so that it encourages treatment. AB 2164, it's not an overreach. It's a necessary measure that will protect physicians and providers alike. Patients deserve physicians who are well, who are taking care of their mental health, and the only way to guarantee their wellness is to make sure it's safe for them to get care. So thank you for making the time for public comment. I appreciate it.
All right, our next request for public comment is from Lucas Evanson. And Lucas, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Speaking on behalf of the California Medical Association, CMA is one of the sponsors of AB 2164, so definitely not in opposition. CMA is sponsoring this legislation to require the MBC and OMBC to revise its application to remove questions which may discourage physicians from seeking mental health treatment. We respectfully request the board take a support position on AB 2164. CMA would like to clarify some of the points raised in the analysis. The analysis claims that the sponsors are misrepresenting the harm or misinterpreting the question. CMA has heard from many physicians and physicians in training, including the one that just testified on the call, that the application questions can reinforce stigma around seeking care. I encourage the board and its staff to review the recording of the MBC's meeting held in February, where several residents called in to testify that they had foregone treatment due to the stigmatization surrounding these questions. The analysis notes that the attention the board has given to the application questions, and CMA appreciates these efforts. We just believe that more should be done. Specific to the OMBC's application, we note the questions relating to mental health are placed in the OMBC's enforcement section of the application, suggesting that they relate to discipline by a hospital or public enforcement entity, as the opening of the enforcement section implies. I appreciate the discussion by the board as it relates to the language related to inpatient psychiatric treatment facility admission. This is written in the past tense and without any qualifiers, suggesting any past admission would require a yes answer. There are numerous reasons an individual may be admitted to an inpatient psychiatric facility, which has no bearing on their ability to practice now, but the OMBC's application frames this as an example of something that does. Finally, the analysis suggests that this bill is only furthering the interests of the profession and not protecting the public, yet none other than the FSMB has been promoting an approach that the North Carolina Medical Board took to address burnout. Rather than asking a licensee whether they have a condition that will impair one's medical practice, there's a statement about the professional expectations as they're related to taking care of oneself. Licensees are then asked if they understand what their professional expectations are, yes or no, and then they can check a box. AB 2164 sets a reasonable standard for the California boards that supports patient protection by ensuring the licensing process reinforces physicians seeking appropriate care before impairment occurs. The guardrails which this bill places around the questions the board may ask in no way infringe on the board's ability to protect the public. Further, ensuring physicians who are suffering from a condition which may impair their ability to practice are receiving appropriate treatment is directly connected to the board's mission to protect the public. For these reasons, we ask the board to adopt a support position as an explicit commitment to physicians and the public that it takes physician mental health and well-being seriously. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we did a switch with moderators, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but I believe Kimberly Turbin was next. So Kimberly, I've given you permission to unmute yourself, and if you've already spoken, my apologies.
So my name is Kimberly Turbin. I am from Stockton, California, and I'm a volunteer with Consumer Watchdog. I want to talk about agenda number 15, AB 2164. if you guys could consider opposing AB 2164. You're fulfilling your mission to protect the public if you do not oppose this bill. It is my understanding that the question on this doctor's licensing application has already been changed and generalized. There is no reason to further change this question to a point that allows a substance abusing doctor to hide his or her impairment issue. Allowing a doctor to hide their substance abuse issue from you on a licensing application goes against your mission to protect the public and Hippocratic oath to do no harm. We understand that the Physicians Association's job is to protect physicians, and our job is to protect patients. One, your job to license doctors and protect patients. Please allow doctors to be accountable, transparent about their impairment issues, and report them to your licensing applications. Thank you.
All right, our next request for public comment is from Maria Ibarra Navarrete. And Maria, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Maria Ibarra Navarrete. I am from San Jose, and I am a volunteer with Consumers Watchdog. It really disturbs me that I am hearing of legislation here today that our legislator is wasting their time and our tax dollars addressing. Finding ways to allow physicians to not have to disclose whether they have an impairment or drug addiction problem is outlandish. It is this board's mission to protect consumers, but it is also our legislators' job to represent us and our best interests, which is protecting us as patients. It is my understanding that the questions that the physicians have to answer on their licensing applications have already been revised before and have already been generalized. It is in everyone's best interest, especially the physician's personal interest, to disclose any impairment issues they have or have had in the past. Continuing to revise the licensing application questions to allow a physician to not report a substance abuse problem or hide a substance abuse problem from this board and his or her patients is immoral and goes directly against the Hippocratic oath to do no harm. For the language of this bill to claim that answering a question about impairment is stressful and that it stigmatizes the physician is really outrageous. You don't know what stress is until you have lost a family member due to medical negligence. It would just further complicate your grief and completely destroy your faith in our healthcare system. If your loved one died due to medical negligence at the hands of a substance abuse physician like Michelle's family member did, please oppose this bill. Please keep in mind that our mission and your mission is to protect the public. Any further altering of the question about impairment on the physician's licensing application will put Californian patients at risk. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Mrs. Board President, Madam Board President, would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please.
All right, it's closed.
Great. So we have a motion, we have a second. Can we get a roll call?
Gora Damian.
Yes.
Dr. Buhari.
Yes.
Dr. Luzak.
Yes.
Andrew Marino.
Yes.
Denise Pines.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great discussion. Exactly what public discourse is supposed to look like. Okay, well, that ends my list of bills that I felt that the board needed to take positions and weigh in on. So I'm leaving the rest of the list, which I've given you a lot of information on the bills, to decide for yourselves whether any of these bills you want to raise for the board's consideration. And before I hand that mission off to Denise, I just want to highlight one of the areas that is a popular topic that FSMB, I think Denise, you reported, AI. Let's see, where is that AI bill? Okay. Okay, so on page 11, there's AB 3030. I'm not recommending a position, but I am wanting to draw your attention because AI is a big issue that is emerging in many, many forms. And this bill gives excellent background about what's happening, what agencies are regulating it, and from, I think, FSMB's perspective, they're anticipating wanting to get boards prepared for this issue. Now, at the current state of AI, it's very minimal in terms of potentially harm, if you will, or bias. It's like answering the phones, doing something, you know, like comments on Amazon or whatever, characterizing what somebody else has written. So this bill is reflecting, which I didn't know, is the governor had a declaration last year, because he's very much into IT and streamlining, to have a pilot, inviting programs, agencies to do a pilot test on AI. And so this bill affects physicians. Physicians using, and it trends what I've seen in AI, which is AI can be harmful. I think the first kind of regulatory action at the federal level was preventing people from using AI to do campaign ads that are misrepresentative. Okay, so this one is saying that physicians, which they're encouraging physicians to use AI, but they have to disclose to their patients or callers that they're talking to AI and how to actually, you know, talk to a real person. That's all this bill is. So it's a very harmless bill, but it's the first wave of something that relates to the profession. And the next iteration, which I think may be years off, would be looking at the bias aspect, the actual data, when it's starting to aggregate data that would normally be in a research context to make actual decisions about medicine. This bill doesn't do that. This bill is just sort of the beginning, and so whenever I see these things, I'm adding them to your list for information so that you're starting to build. Gore. This one was AB 3030 on page 11 of my memo. The legislature analysis was great. I just liberally printed a lot of that, quoted their analysis. And so I only put it there not for a position, but to make sure that you start to build your AI knowledge. Now, Denise, I turn it over to you to see quiz board members of any other bills on our list that they may want to consider for discussion and or positions.
So there's a bill that I'd like us to bring forward, AB 2862.
Page 6.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Can you give us a overview of that bill?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So page 6 on my memo, AB 2862, by Gibson, is expedite licensure for African American applicants. This is supported by the California Legislative Black Caucus, and I give you quotes from the authors and the caucus in terms of the intention behind this bill. The intention behind the bill is to provide a way that African American applicants to become a DO or MD would be able to be expedited and not left sort of with the rest of the group to be licensed. This is part of other expedited bills that we do. This would be the 6th. I think we are required by law to expedite 5 other categories, so this would be the 6th. And the issues basically are trying to identify and help those descendants of African American slaves that have made their way to apply for a licensure to be given an expedited license. So because among other things, they have suffered a lot of delays and been ignored. And so this would be a way to say, yes, we want you in the profession, we're going to expedite your license. The concern I have that I wrote in here is that with expedited licenses, this would be the 6th, at some point and the committee also subsequent raised this, the BMP committee, at some point you reach a tipping point for expedited licensors where they get diluted. Like if everybody's expedited, then you don't really have expedited licensure. So that could be at this point or not. That's one consideration. The consideration that I and other boards have raised is the daily documentation of processing applications or expedites, expedites always still include documentation. The documentation for competency and to see that applicants meet the requirements is still there. It's just done faster. Okay, so one of the concerns, and it's not just our board, is what documentation for this particular bill, if approved, would somebody submit? Because the bill is targeting those of African American slavery descent. But it would beg the question, like, what kind of document would give you that information? And would it be anybody that is claiming the descent? And what would they use? Their photograph? And would photographs really depict people that are 100% descendants versus just a percentage of descendants? So there's a real concern about the documentation. That's just from the boards who process this. And I will say that one of the things that is often maybe frustrating to both applicants is they think, well, how long does it take to process these, applications? Well, one of the things that behind the scenes happens is the licensing staff works very hard to protect these expedited, statuses so that nobody else that's not in that group gets expedited, right? And so that's where the documentation comes in, is the checking. Are they really eligible, or are they trying to get in on an expedited license? This bill, I don't know, and nobody from boards discussions have said what kind of documentation would come to that. Two is how, would it open it up for a huge expedited category if everybody suddenly says, hey, I have a little bit of African American in me, and so I'm applying for the eligibility. Okay, the committees, on the other hand, are focusing on the constitutionality. The constitutionality that this raises is racial preference, and there is the Pacific Legal Foundation is in opposition. They typically sue on constitutional issues around state legislatures. They've done it in California, and so they would be sitting there ready to sue because they believe this bill is unconstitutional as written. So that's kind of all of the background on the nuances, not just any bill. This is taking on a lot of complexities.
I have a quick question.
Okay. Sure.
How long does it take, the difference between expedited and non-expedited?
Yeah, Machiko can tell you.
So honestly, that varies. We have quite a few applicants that have requested expedite, have not provided the required documentation to substantiate the expedite, or there are those that have followed our directions to the T, have already requested all of the primary source documents, and are actually receiving their license not because they've requested expedite, just because they have complied with all of the requirements to obtain a license. We have applicants that apply, so our time frame is all applications need to be reviewed and approved within 60 days. 60 days, I think, is our cycle time. Within that week, so weekly, I provide my analysts with an overview of the applications that have come in, both just regular applications and a separate tracker for those that are requesting expedite. Some of them are licensed the same day they receive their application. Others take time because they have deficiencies that they haven't satisfied. So it's case by case, and it's not really because of the expedite sometimes. It's just because they have read, understood what's needed, and followed the directions. And so it's hard to say.
If I may add to the analysis of this bill that the board staff has done, we don't feel like it's going to be a major impact. Our population for African Americans is extremely low in our situation. I do want to point out that this is not just a bill for medical board and osteo, but also all the other boards within all boards within the department. So bigger impacts for other boards, not for us. But there is the issue with our current situation that we do have 6 expedited application pathways. This would be the 6 that, like Machiko mentioned, they don't follow the direction at times. And so if we end up supporting this, it would behoove the board to look for additional staffing so that we can guide these individuals on what's needed, make sure that they're fully educated so that they could essentially become expedited as the intent of the bill. Right now, there's a lot of applicants that are not reading things properly, so we have to spend a lot of time going back and asking for the additional documents to be submitted, and therefore that expedite doesn't truly become an expedite. So not much of an impact. We don't foresee it being an impact. However, there are some issues, like Terry mentioned, that we don't know what we're going to ask for in terms of documentation. And I do want to point out that there's been 2 positions of oppose already within our boards that they've been taking because of this exact reason, is even if we were to choose an amended, support if amended, what would be that amendment? We don't know what we're going to ask for. That's a very sensitive topic.
And I will add, with regards to differentiating between expedites and normal applications, analysts do have a color coding system that they use in office. So typically our applications go in just a regular manila folder. But for whatever the expedite request is, it goes into a specific folder color. And if they're requesting more than 2 types, we'll just use every color that is associated with the expedite being requested. But like I said, I am running reports weekly, and I'm finding that we have quite a few that have not complied with the expedite request documentation. So I'm keeping that in mind as well.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea. I like the idea. I think it's appropriate. But with expedited reviews, it's nice if they give you language on what the expectation is. 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 weeks. It's very vague. I mean, it just means move them to the top of the pile. Of course, your questions are also very valid. How are you going to, Doc, how are you going to prove? What is the proof that's required? That's not in the language. But with expedited things, I like to see a time where you know, okay, well, we better get it done by such and such.
You mean like the 5 days that other bill is saying?
Yeah, I mean, that may be a little bit ambitious.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know, but that at least gives you something to shoot for. Because if you say historically these, this group of people or these groups of now 6, if this goes through, have been sort of delayed and sort of put to the back of the pile and the bottom and all that, that could still go on. And I'm just saying, you're in the expedited pile. Don't worry about it. We're getting to it.
Well, and as a whole, with DCA, we are reviewing our cycle times across all of the boards. We're finding that each board has a different idea of application receipt dates. And so we're trying to streamline that across all boards so that it is something, it's reportable in a manner conducive to everyone.
And I think just to add to that, up until now, I think the board's kind of been behind on all of the licensing. So we're sort of on the cusp of like being in a position to really maybe be able to say, well, we could offer so much, so many days expedited, but we haven't lived in that reality for very long. So it's good to hear that would make a difference. Days are always, like in statute of expedite, are always kind of terrifying to boards because the minute you don't meet it, then you're technically, in violation or non-compliance, which you never want to be. So then the question is, was it a realistic number of days, and what happens if, the delay, like Machiko says, if they have all their documents, boom, they're licensed. It's when they don't. And then that back and forth, it makes the staff wonder, are they eligible? Really? Is that why I'm not getting the documents? Or are they just procrastinating? Because if you're in an expedite, you would think you're not going to procrastinate on giving the board what they want. So the staff sort of thinks, well, maybe they're not eligible, when they don't see that. So in terms of, from a PR perspective, you're saying having a number might be something that would be, that we could do, but the bill doesn't require that right now. But it's good to hear.
Yes.
Two questions and a comment. The expedited categories, could we identify what the current expedited categories are? And are those categories across all DCA boards, or is it just the Osteopathic Medical Board and Medical Board of California? And then I have a comment.
I think a few are across all boards. Some are specific to allied health. Currently, there is medically underserved. There is military expedite, military spouse expedite, asylee or immigrant, abortion services, and this would be the sixth if implemented.
And the medically underserved is what applies to OMBC currently and medical board.
Okay, thanks so much. The perspective I would like to share on this bill is, while certainly I am supportive of redress or reparations, I think they're definitely due. I think trying to address the harm that has been done over generations, over centuries, at the back end, at a time like this, when someone's trying to get a license, it is a drop in the bucket. Where we need to address these issues is on education and kids coming up, improving the pipeline that would address the dearth of African American or Black applicants, so that folks to address the harm that has been done is to figure out a way to get more applicants into school so they can ultimately be licensed, as opposed to the minimal impact of trying to address issues on the back end like this.
So I'm going to make a couple comments because I'm a Black person, and I understand the perspective of where this is coming from. So I want to say, before I knew about this bill, I had received a phone call from somebody very high ranking that there was a Black woman who was trying to get her license in our state. Wasn't OSTI, thank goodness. It was Med Board, and was experiencing significant delays, and then was offered a probationary type license. And when I look at, I sit on an admissions committee for a medical school, and the percentage of African Americans that actually can get into med school is so proportionately low relative to the ones who actually are seeking to get admission and have the same criteria as other people that we have actually let into the school. So factually, even though all of us are, are about, being inclusive on the decision-making committee, we aren't really. We're not even looking at how we're making decisions. So yes, there's definitely a pipeline issue, but there is a current decision-making that is very active of potential medical students who want to go into school, and then the next hurdle is they finish school and trying to get a residency program, and they have challenges there. And then next is they make it out of residency and they actually get placed in a facility, and they have problems there. So throughout the trajectory of one person's career is fighting at every level. And the percentage we're talking about is maybe 2%, 4% on the average across the entire country for physicians. Is a 4% of our physician population are African American. To the point of how do you identify who is really an African American, I think the reparations committee for our state has been putting forth some criteria around this, in case we actually get reparations passed in our state. So I think there are some things that we can look at there, because they have really looked at this in detail. And then I did a report recently around cultural congruence and Black maternal care. And there is compelling evidence that bills like this are really needed to address the issues of the lack of someone who looks like them having a provider, and that when there are studies that when a provider looks, if someone's Black, has a provider that looks like them, that their care tends to be better, right? Their outcomes of the patient is better. So I know this is, definitely a sensitive issue because it's, designed around race, but it's designed around race for a very specific reason. I mean, we shouldn't even be having a bill that we have to consider about expediting a particular license around someone's race. It's almost ridiculous, to be honest, right? But it's just where we are as a factual today, not hyperbole. It is in the moment, right? What people are dealing with. So that's my, personal that I had to voice around this bill. We don't have to, take a position. We could be neutral on it. We could take a support if amended around some of the things that we've had discussed in terms of, what is expediting, what's the timeline that we would recommend for that, and then what is the criteria of defining someone being an African American. Are there any other discussions?
Maybe if I may just say a couple of notes in terms of our overall application process. A year ago, as you all know, we were at 8 months with our applications. We're now down to 30 days. For the majority of the time, if everything has been submitted, Machico staff is processing these applications within 3 to 5 days. So just for a little bit of comfort, regardless of what position the board decides to take, our efforts are going to be enhanced in that area of education in terms of educating our applicants on what is needed. I did mention earlier in my executive report that one of our projects that we have on the horizon is to work with our communications team to develop a video that will guide our applicants that we hope to share with all of our schools. We have been reaching out to the schools to start at setting up those parameters when we're able to do in person, but maybe we could do virtual. We've been talking about that most recently so that we can meet with our third-year students and get them prepared. So just as comfort, our goal in general is to bring that down. Being at 30 days is amazing. I would like to see it at 15 days. 10 days would be ideal. So I don't think it will impact, going forward with whatever decision the board would, takes on this position. I think that our efforts internally are going to be to help provide more education to make sure that those applications, no matter who it is, that they're being equipped with the proper documentation so that we could go ahead and license quickly.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments from the board?
Does it seem like the best position is still to watch this bill? But maybe, I don't know, there's no such thing as
a neutral
tacit
position?
approval or, in favor of the goal of the bill. Because it's just not a complete bill.
Right. Well, we wouldn't, as they say, you got to have a position to play, so to speak, in the legislature. So anything like supportive doesn't give you that ticket to play if we wanted to, to play and negotiate, and be involved with suggestions. It's a tough one. This bill is a tough one because I think, it mixes a good cause with a lot of complexity. But for the documentation issue, that's a biggie, because if we didn't have the documentation issue, I would say this would be almost a slam dunk. We do have the constitutionality issue looming, but the fact that it could be abused, so, you know, Denise is right. The population, I think the African-American population in California is 4% or less, so that's not a big number. Wouldn't overwhelm the board in terms of the amount of workload and stuff. But if you cannot nail down that documentation issue, you could be having that stretched by people taking advantage of that. And my guess is the board is, like, I don't have an idea as the one that, you know, proposes, you know, reg language, what that documentation would be. I think it would be probably one of the most unaccountable type of documentations. You would just have to believe the person if they stated, I'm eligible, you know, and if, you know, and it could be a wait and see to see if it's not abused, then the intention of the law would be achieved. If it is abused, we're going to see it at the licensing level because of the number of people suddenly, you know, proportionally more than 4% of the applicants suddenly become African American. You know that there's, you know, a lot of ineligibles in there, which defeats the purpose of the original bill. So this is a tough one. I don't have language on documentation. I thought about it, and it just is tough. You know, if there is some, you know, if some of the groups that Denise you mentioned have looked at this and they can figure out some documentation, that would solve that problem. If we had that documentation defined that would really make people eligible and people would have it, then that would be the answer. But I don't, you know, so at this point in saying support if amended, I don't know what we'd amend is, you know, going into the discussion. But again, if you don't have a position, you can't add to the discussion. So it really depends on how the board wants to view this. Do we want to be involved in the discussion, or do we sort of respect all of the things that are
But
in play?
if the board, I mean, I think it's an idea at this point. It's just not, it's not ripe, the bill.
Yeah.
You know, if we said watch, that still doesn't prevent you on the back end of using your normal process, contacting the office and saying, we want to support it.
Yes, it would, because I respect the board's position. You give me the authority to convey a position. If we have a watch, that's not a position to be able to articulate. I can articulate that to the legislature, but it's not a good enough one to say, we like the idea, but we didn't take a position, we're watching it, we have some ideas. Now, if I'm giving them ideas, those are not ideas that you've come up with and blessed, you know, in terms of position. So no, a watch position would not allow us to weigh in. Only a position would allow us to weigh in if we suddenly have ideas, we want to talk to the author. The other thing is, let's say you wanted to support because it's a good idea. If it goes south and we're implementing it, because we're implementing it, then we're kind of stuck with that support position if it's a bad bill. You know, the way it turns out to be a bad bill. So our supports lends the message, as a board, we support this issue and this bill. But then if they don't solve the documentation issue and they leave it up to the boards, you know, then, and we don't really have a good answer, you know, then it could be, could see a lot of people applying.
Could you support pending presentation of the language for what documentation is going to be required, what duration of time is going to be necessary to confirm that this is compliant as far as the expedited
if you
review?
added a time frame.
Could you, so those, the two well, because sometimes the TSA pre-check line is longer than the regular line, you know?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a duration, you put it in the expedited
Right.
pile, which Machiko says is this big.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, so what does expedited mean, number one, an
Right.
actual definition? Number two, what does it mean? What is the documentation required? We could support the bill pending those items.
Okay.
Could we not?
I'll let you know what as it stands now for expedite requests, most of them require official documentation from whatever source you're trying to go through. So medically underserved, you've accepted employment at a medically underserved facility.
Which you have access to the data that says yes.
Correct.
Right, because we're asking for something on letterhead from that facility.
Well, and OSHPD keeps the documentation of the code
Right.
for, yeah.
Abortion services, the same. Military expedite, I need your DD 214. So it's not just self-certification, it's self-certification, but more specifically something from that entity that you will be employed with. This one, it's vague. There's nothing. Right.
Well, I'm saying it's an incomplete bill. Like I said, we like the idea. I think I don't see any opposition from the purpose of the bill from anybody on the board. I think we're all in support of it, but it's an incomplete bill. It's an idea at this point.
Well, and because of the complexities, the documentation issue is being raised in board meetings, because that's where the rubber meets the road for us. It's not being raised in the committee analysis. What's being raised in the committee analysis is the constitutionality issue. So, you know, we could be crossing in the night in terms of like, we're concerned with that, but the legislature is not at that point. So, you know, we could go in with a position and say, you know, we'd like to fix your bill, so we fix the documentation, we have a definition, we have a time frame, so it's much more tight. And the committee looks at us and says, well, that's not the real big issue. You know, we're worried about the constitutionality. So this is why this bill is really super complex. And it's hard to hurdle. I mean, but I encourage you, if you think it's a good bill, pick a position that you want. If you want to stay out of the kind of complexity or think that it may not be a good one for us to have to implement, you know, we don't have to take a position. That's why I did not put a position on this bill from myself. I really am leaving it up to you guys.
My opinion would be to watch this bill until it actually comes together. But it's kind of that's just what I'm doing because the bill's not complete.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason. I don't want to say watch and take ourselves out of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is what you're suggesting may happen if we take that stance that, we're just going to sit by on the sideline. We're not interested in participating. We're interested in participating, but we need to see what they have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's strictly adhere to I don't negotiate on the board's behalf unless I have the authority. I don't feel like I have the authority unless I have, you know, a specific position. That's why I don't, it'd be nice. I'd love to be able to just kind of check up.
Can we establish something like we did when it came to legislation regarding marijuana, where we established maybe the president could put forward a couple of board members who are willing to participate that may want to attend the committee meeting or go to the committee and make comments? I don't know.
Well, you'd still have to have the authority of the whole board because you're trying to represent.
Right, but if there's a committee assigned of board members.
They would still, that committee, the way it would work, their recommendation would still have to come back to the full board for authority to execute that position. So, I mean, it's a good idea, but it still comes down to, you know, and hearing the reason I respect this, you know, kind of the sacredness of public discourse. And so part of that comes with authority. I don't want to be going and having conversations that I don't have authority to do. This is what's putting us in this position. You could wink, wink and say, Terry, can't you just like make some suggestions on the side? Well, I don't do that. It just integrity wise, it's not, you know, being honest. And I'm not representing you if I do that. So that's where it really comes down to the position, a position or versus a watch. I don't, you know, if you wanted to do the committee, again, you'd still have to have a full board meeting to bless and, you know, decide officially what that would be. You know, what that position would be. So, you know, that's another option. It's, you know, the way the constitutionality of this bill is so heavy and looming. The Judiciary Committee weighed in on this, and it's possible this bill doesn't get out of appropriations, which is where it is now. Appropriations is the kind of graveyard for bills that are controversial, that the leadership doesn't want to see the light of day. But it could be that it gets out because everybody feels strongly. It's a good issue. It's a good cause, a long time in coming. So, you know, I don't know if it'll be still in play later on if we do it a committee versus, you know, making a decision now.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments? I don't want to speak for anybody, but are we just staying neutral on this? Is this where we're at?
I think we just have to watch it.
Okay.
But closely enough that if we see movement or anything, that it comes back to the board somehow, and you can always have ad hoc meetings established.
I could do that. You know, in my role, I can monitor it. If there's some movement that looks like it maybe solves our problem that would make, given this discussion, make a material difference in our position, we could do it at teleconference, you know, with the 10-day notice, a little bit more, but, you know, at least the 10-day notice and make a decision this session, you know. So if that could be the watch plus position.
Okay, so I'm going to see if there's any public comment with public members in the audience. Moderator, is there any public comments online?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see Holly Macris asking for comments. So Holly, just a moment. All right, Holly, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello again. Hello again. I just want to let you all know that we're watching this bill as well. So when we start seeing something, I will ask our lobbyists to connect with Terry to discuss whatever it might be, because we want to make sure that you all are supported in the efforts that are going to be coming your way, and we appreciate all the time you do and all the time you take to get our license, just to get everything and everybody licensed in a timely manner. So just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and I see no further request for comment. Madam President, I return the floor back to you.
Great. So that ends our bills?
Unless there's another one on the list. Unless there's another one on the list that you want to raise.
Nope. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, can I get your feedback? What was the difference of this particular lots of information versus more brief information? It'd be nice to get feedback on which one you like, which one you prefer.
I thought it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
You felt more empowered?
I mean, provided it's
Yeah.
not, this isn't the same, and you're going to go over all 15 bills or 20 bills, then it just becomes too much. But if there are 3 or 4 or 5 bills that we want to go into depth that are going to affect the board the most, then this type of presentation, I think, was good.
Me too.
And then it gives you the choice, if your bills are different, that you could add those, you know, for discussion. So the way that this had to be agendized is for possible action and consideration has to be in the same agenda without wording, but we don't have to present on all the bills. And in the past, I had short little blurbs and then I presented on all the bills. And that's why I wanted to give you still take away the information I provided you, but we didn't have to necessarily discuss or take positions on all of them if you didn't feel strongly about them.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so that concludes my presentation on LEDGE. Good discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, so if I can get, if there's any public comment in the room on any of all the bills that are listed. If there's anybody online that has a comment on one of the bills that they want to make a comment on right now.
Thank you, Madam President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on any of the bills, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator, and I see no request for comment at this time. Madam President, I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thornfison. We appreciate that, all the work that you've put into putting these bills and summarizing them for us, and your passion as you discuss them with us. Thank you. Our next agenda item is 16, which is future agenda items. We have still a pending presentation from a request from future agenda item, which is the aging brain, and we're going to have that presentation in November of this year. And then I would like to propose that the Attorney Generals provide a detailed presentation on the disciplinary process to help onboard our new incoming board members. And we're going to do some other onboarding around the complaint process when we have new board members that come on board. I think it's always good to have a refresher for all of us, actually. Are there any other board members that want to add a future agenda item?
I don't know if these might already be future agenda items. The consumer watchdog people are asking for communication committee, which I think we're moving towards with those in-person meetings, and enforcement committee. Is that something we want to add to the agenda?
Yeah, we're really waiting to, get new board members. So then we know. So then we have the ability to see which board.
It's on
yes.
the pending list.
Oh, it's totally on the pending list. Yes. Okay. Any other board member have a future agenda item? Okay. Do we have any comments from public members in the audience? Any comments from public members online?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment on future agenda items, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. And I do see Michelle Montserrat Ramos with a hand raised. So, Michelle, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I'm with Consumer Watchdog. And a future agenda item we would like to see the board take on is an update on the diversion program, and specifically a report on the uniform standards to see how they're being followed and any specific standards in particular that are not being followed and are being reported or not being reported to the board as not being followed. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Madam President, I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. So we are on agenda item 17, which is adjournment. We are going to adjourn. It is 3:29 p.m. on May 16th. Thank you, everybody.